Why is the most important thing we convey? The work is secondary. Like truly, the work, the execution, the implementation, the tracking, all of that is way secondary to understanding the why. If people don't understand why we're recommending what we're doing, why we see it as an advantage, why we think, like, if you don't get that part across to them, you're never going to get anywhere because it becomes subjective.
Welcome, Bill Harper, to the Dots podcast.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate you having me here. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah. And before we actually even begin, what I'll do is I'll set you up as, for the audience listening, is Bill, I found him on TikTok. He's exploding like crazy, going viral. Your videos have got millions and millions of views, and you have like this very cheeky, fun, tongue-in-cheek sort of persona on TikTok. It resonates with me so much. I've been actually bookmarking and saving a lot of your videos. And so I just reached out. I was like, hey, Bill, I would love to chat with you. And here we are. So for the audience
I'm so glad that you did. Thank you.
So for the audience listening, I would love for you to introduce sort of yourself, of who is Bill. I think that'll be the most fair way for the audience to get a sense of who you are.
Honestly, I'm completely irrelevant. That's the beauty of this. So, I mean, truly, my belief on it is that I've gotten to a point where the only relevance I have is in helping people to achieve the thing that they're trying to achieve. So if you're really interested, fine, but I'll try and keep it really brief because let's be honest, it's what I know that's going to be of interest to people. They could care less about me as a person. So, I mean, I think, and that's all fine and dandy. So, classic 32 this years in the business, doing what I learned at the, apron strings of guys from New York. It was classic branding, brand strategy, research, consumer insights, big brand idea, bold execution, the smaller stuff, the performance marketing stuff and the SEM, SEO, like I leave that to people who are far smarter than I am about how data relates to data. But the top end of brand is where I got in love. I cut my teeth at DMB&B working on the stuff that you're supposed to be all excited about when you leave college. The big Anheuser-Busch's, which I was almost allowed to push a broom on, and, the Blockbuster videos and the enterprise rental cars and all that dreck, which was all fantastic. And I loved doing it. And it was fun to have those kind of budgets and everything. But those groups are about maintaining their position. Avis has been number 2 since the 50s, and that works for them. So like they don't want to go anywhere. They don't want to, like, if they became number 1 tomorrow, they'd like lose their mind because their brand would fall apart. So like what I fell in love with as I was going through my career was companies that want to scale. So we primarily work with businesses that are under about $500 million that are really trying hard to kick zeros around. And the gap that we fill is the one that Harvard left when they decided to create their MBA program, which is that there are actually people who have to buy this, and those people are emotional. They're not a product of some structured, regimented, internally focused, navel-gazing exercise on operational efficiency, managerial accountability, and so forth. And so I fill that gap by teaching businesses that are growth-minded how to tell the story that will get people to realize that they care. And that's it. So I hope that was a helpful summary of the sum total of my life in a professional expression. That's it. That's all I got for you, man.
And it's always a treat to talk to somebody from the agency background because
yeah, we're the fun people at the bar in our 80s that are sitting down at the corner that have stories. This one time I was on a plane in Puerto Rico in the middle of a hurricane with, John Belushi, and it was great. And you're like, holy, who is this person? Yeah. Those were the guys that taught me how to do it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember,
it was fun.
Even when I was starting out, I was kind of lost. And, so I remember, long story short, the first day I walked into an advertising agency, saw a bunch of people walking around suits, some in shorts and flip flops. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I felt right at home from day one. I was like, this is my space.
This is my sandbox. This is where I belong. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Okay, so now what I would love to sort of kick things off with is, and this is something that you're kind of doing on your TikTok channel, and then you're also kind of doing over on YouTube, is sort of going behind the scenes and taking people through what it is and what it isn't, like myth busting almost. So, you know, the $1 million question is, what is a brand? And what do people not understand or get about what is a brand? Because it's such a polluted word, right? I know that
it is polluted. God, what a beautiful word choice. I like 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10. Perfect word choice. Polluted like a freshman at his first college party, like polluted. Yes. Here's what people don't know. Here's why they don't know it. A brand is the reputation, expectation of engaging with your company. If I go to an Eddie Murphy movie, what do I expect? I expect to laugh my ass off. Why? Because Eddie Murphy's brand is being funny. That's brand. That expectation. If I go to a James Bond movie and James Bond comes out 50 pounds overweight, balding, wearing a Hawaiian bowling shirt and, you know, little sock suspenders over shorts, it's not Bond because it's off brand. And so people get all caught up in this idea about, well, it's your logo. No, it's not. It's your identity. No, it's not. It's the way you do advertising. No, it's not. The thing is, those are all ways that you create that ongoing, consistent expectation set. If Eddie Murphy all of a sudden started doing, I'm so old. Can I even use Eddie Murphy anymore? Is that relevant? Anyway, I'm going to go back in the Wayback Machine. I'm not going to worry about that. If you're too young to understand what I'm talking about with Eddie Murphy, then we're probably not the right person to be listening to. Anyway, so if I go to watch Eddie Murphy and all of a sudden Eddie Murphy starts doing drama all the time, I'm going to be like, wait, dude, do you remember when Bill Murray did that? Do you remember when Bill Murray went, I've forgotten what the name of the movie was, but he did this like super suicidal, like The Razor's Edge. It was called The Razor's Edge. And it was this movie that like he suddenly decided to show his dramatic side and character and whatever. And it was like this guy and he was like sat in a hotel room or something. I don't know. Is it 30 years ago I saw this film? Anyway, it was so off brand. Everybody went to see the train wreck. It was like, okay, wait, Bill Murray's going to be dramatic? I'm going. And I think that gives people a false sense of security because they're like, well, hell, they came to see it. And it's like, whatever. Hold on a second. Somebody's decided to do yard work at the exact time during our thing. So everybody goes to see the movie. Why? But for the wrong reasons. They're going and they're like, well, I can't wait to see him try to pull this off. So you're basically going to see, you know, the three-headed elephant in the jar under the circus tent, but it's not sustainable, right? Because that's not his brand. And I think what, you know, just using him as a great example, what he's doing now with his little tell anybody you want, they'll never believe it, of him like walking up to somebody and just eating their French fries at a restaurant, right? Or like showing up at somebody's wedding and being like, I'm going to dance with the bride. And it's like everybody loses their mind and it's like, no one's going to believe it. And then he walks off set. Or, you know, I saw one that he did that I just loved, that he went to this party. He like followed these people into their house and then went into the kitchen and did their dishes. Like he was just standing there. He's just like, he owns weird. He's owned weird since SNL. He's owned weird since Caddyshack, where I feel like of all of the characters, the Carl in Caddyshack was so like, the role was made for him. It was perfect for who he was. And I feel like Carl just came back around. It was like, now he goes and he does dishes at people's walk-up apartments in New York. Like that's just cool. Like I want to be that. I want to be that guy. I read somewhere somebody referred to him as the modern day Jesus. And I thought all religion and politics aside, I was like, yeah, like that's what you want. You want him to roll up into your house and be like, dude, you're a little light on beer. I made a phone call down the block. 3,400 cases are on their way. I just wanted you guys to have a good time. Listen, I'm going to do some dishes and then I got to hit the sack. Like I got a thing with my son tomorrow at a golf thing. This is the coolest role ever. So anyway, there's a brand for you that has stood the test of time.
That actually also reminds me of, when Jim Carrey did like the Eternal, I think. Oh
yeah. Eternal, Light of Life, or I forget. I forget what
of the Spotless Mind, where he did like the serious character, and everybody was like, "What the hell? What's going on here?"
Well, and then he became it in real life, which made it all the more interesting because he actually was like, "Actually, it was the other thing that was the joke. Like, this is who I really am." And I thought that was quite the transition, but I think it was actually genuine. So yeah, that's pretty hip. I was like, "All right, I'm down with that."
Oh my God. I'm already like,
dude, we're not even 15 minutes in. You're needing Kleenex. Like, this is a good interview. This is the way that these are supposed to go.
Yeah, I burned so many calories in the first 15 minutes.
Dribbling mess by the end of it is perfect. That's exactly what I'm after.
Yeah. So holy smokes. There we go.
Oh, have we got focal issues?
I don't know. This is the first time it's happened. Okay, so now for the people listening, what I would love for them to take away, and this is kind of what I thought could be like the fabric of our conversation. Brand would be the heart of the whole thing because that's sort of the epicenter of sort of everything that you talk about. But I would love to bring the lens of like how you've over time as an entrepreneur built your own personal brand. And that's something that's relatable to an individual. But then I think one thing that you also talk about, and I think you had a really great example on one of your TikToks, is, people have this stigma of, oh, you can't be creative in B2B or bring brand into B2B. So those are the two I would love to explore on this conversation with you.
So here's the thing. Here's my point of view on brand. There is no B2B or B2C. These are labels that people made up to confuse the holy crap out of themselves. There is relevant and interesting, or there is irrelevant and uninteresting. That's it. You can clear off all the marketing books over at Barnes & Noble now. This is it. This is all you needed. You're either relevant and interesting or you're not. So stop paying for shit you don't need. Okay? Like, I'm just going to give it to you straight. Now, it's going to take you, like it takes all of us in the business, 20 years to figure out what the hell to do with that information, which is why you continue to hire agencies and why AI is going to be the ruin of most businesses. But nonetheless, all of those labels don't apply, and here's why. Okay, in case this is coming off as me being glib about it, the reason is because people don't stop being people just because they go to work, and people don't stop being influenced by consumer messaging just because they go to work. They bring all of that with them, and they don't change who and what they are or the way that they make decisions simply because they change their location. Now, does that mean that they don't have additional considerations? No, and I use this example all the time because it's a fun and easy way to do it. Nobody buys software because they want software. They buy software because their boss is on their back that they can't get their TPS reports done in time. And so they buy the software because the promise of the software is that they can get their TPS reports done in a quarter of the time that it took them to do it by themselves. And if they do that, they're going to get their boss off their back. Brands only exist to do one of two things: either make something possible or make something go away. Period. End of story. So you got to figure out, what pain point are you solving? Volvo likes the idea of safety. Porsche likes the idea of performance, right? Porsche's enemy would be boredom or dull driving or whatever. And, Volvo's enemy would be unsafe outcomes, crash, decapitation, not living past a crash. Like, these are the constructs of the story. And then the hero, the brand, gets to be the answer to the problem. No Darth Vader, no Luke Skywalker. Or I guess the modern equivalent is no Voldemort, no Harry Potter, right? If you don't have a reason for tension, then why would anybody care? The greatest screwdriver in the world stays in my toolbox until the moment that I have to hang a picture. And it is completely irrelevant to me until that moment. And only at that moment does it become relevant. Now, if the company that was behind that screwdriver was interesting, earned my attention, educated and entertained me in a way that I had, some sense of loyalty to that brand over like the other guys that just sell a screwdriver, then when I go to use a screwdriver or I need to buy another screwdriver, I'm going to buy from the brand that I know because I'm comfortable with them and I believe in what they stand for. That's it. Like when you boil it off, that's the structure of all of it. The world is a huge cocktail party. That's all it is. And when you go in and you start talking about yourself, oh, look at my pen. Did you know that my pen has more colors than anybody else? And the cap sits snugly on top of it better than anybody. Like, who cares? I don't buy a pen for those reasons. I buy a pen because I need to write something at all, or I need to write upside down and I need a pen that will keep me from flicking my pen all day long, or, whatever. Like, those are the pain points. The pen is irrelevant. The pen is going to happen. The pen is just a vehicle to get them to be able to do something they want to do or to make a problem stop being a problem. Businesses, for whatever reason, completely don't get this point. And that's why ad agencies exist. And again, why AI is going to put most of them out of business, because they're going to say, oh my gosh, it's going to be so easy. I need an ad. Give me an ad for a pen. And it's going to say, this is the world's greatest pen. And the people who don't know any better are going to say, hot diggity whoopty, I got me an ad for a pen. Woo, we better get that sucker out into the world and let it get out there and sell us some pens. And it's going to A/B test itself through some programmatic BS until it does absolutely the best 15% effectiveness that it can do. And no one's going to know any different. And then they're going to go out of business. And then they're going to sit around and sob and cry and talk about the day that they were supposed to be rich and famous, but it all fell apart and they can't quite put their finger on why. I mean, this is just my take. I'd be happy to hear your point of view.
Oh my God. If clients ever heard like how we actually talk.
No, that's the thing. All of mine do. Like, this is what you're going to get. Because I refuse to be a part of the problem with them in this respect. They don't pay me to be nice. They pay me to tell them the truth. Like, that's what's wrong with our industry. Nobody wants to tell the truth anymore. We're going to get you a whole bunch of money. Oh, okay. How are you going to do that? I don't know, but man, it's going to work. I'll tell you what. Woo! It's not good. Just not good.
I love it. I don't want to be part of the problem. You don't get paid to be part of the problem. I love that line.
No.
I love that line. I don't get paid to be part of the problem. That is
Where's
amazing.
the accountability anymore? I mean, I can't tell you the number of clients that I have told, please don't make me pay for the sins of your past agencies, because they do. They'll line us up, and it's months of handholding and patience and just listening to them tell you that you don't know what you're doing and you're an idiot, and it's all fear-based. It's all like, we're not in market yet, but man, this isn't how we've ever done it in the past, and yada, yada, yada. And it's hard on both teams. You have to be super patient as the agency, because you realize that it's not their fault, right? They have been put through such a bullshit ringer, and they've been yanked every which way but loose. And now dollars are tight because they've wasted it on bad partners. And it's like, okay, we gotta accept that PTSD is real. It's not easy on your team because they're constantly being judged unfairly about what they're trying to accomplish. And then when the light finally goes off and it's like something works and they go, oh, it can work, right? And then they have to, like, there's a whole thing there. There's a lot to help people get through. And there's a lot of BS that goes on out in the world. It's hard to find a group that actually knows what the hell they're doing and that stands behind the work and doesn't run for cover the second something that they said doesn't happen the way that they said it would.
Right. By the way, there's so much to unpack here. And there's definitely a lot of things I do want to, I have made notes and I do want to unpack a lot of those things. Just kind of like any relationship, it's like, dealing with the traumas that the person has from their past relationships, like helping them get through that, doing the therapy part that you're talking about. But before I do any of that, actually, there's a lot of people online, there's some like, even like Ashwin, or who makes some really great.
Oh, Schwinnebago. Yeah. Schwinnebago. He's awesome.
I would love to have him also on at some point. But where I was going with this was that, there's a whole bunch of people making content and talking about different topics. But what really won me over with your content, because I saw, your TikTok like serves a whole bunch of different content. Obviously, some of it was entertaining, but the one that really got me and demonstrated to me the level of clarity that you have in the way you think about things is the one that you're talking about when somebody is driving and their car breaks down on the highway.
Oh, the tow truck story. Yeah, the tow truck story.
You mind sharing that story, and then we can start unpacking some of those things?
You know what's so cool about the tow truck story? All right, so the story behind the story is actually really fun. I made the story up on the way to a meeting that was going to have, I forget if it was 12 or 15 people in it. But the problem was but the thing was that on the one side of the room, I had a senior VP that I had to pay attention to. And on the other end of the room, I had somebody that was like an account coordinator that knew nothing about brand, right? And there were all these people in between. And I was driving there and I was like, how am I going to do that? And I had this really short presentation. It was like, I don't know, 10 slides. It was 15 minutes long. And I just remember like this idea came to me and I was like, I'm going to try this. Now, I was at Blue Cross, so I don't mind saying that like this was kind of a big meeting, right? But I walk into the meeting and I sit down and the senior VP comes in and sits down and he says he's like the nicest guy too. And he's like super buttoned up. Like I have all this respect for this guy. And he comes and he sits down and I said, here's the thing. I said, I have a slide presentation and only 2 of the slides are about the agency. So it's a pretty good deck. Chuckle, like try the veal, right? And I said, now I can give that to you and it'll take about 15 minutes. Or I can tell you a 90-second story that's instantly going to unify everybody in the room around the true meaning of brand in a way that you'll never forget. Which do you choose? He sits back and he looks at me and he's a Southern guy. He goes, well, damn, I want to hear the story. And for the first time ever, I told the tow truck story. So here's how the tow truck story goes. And this is for people who don't get how brand works. But it's a really great way to get out of your own company head and to hear what it is. So I want you to imagine that you have been working towards something for a while. It can be your parents' 50th anniversary and you're emceeing it, or it can be a $100 million deal that you're going to get a great commission on. It doesn't matter, but it's important to you. You've been working hard and it's the morning of the big day. So you get all dressed up in your Sunday best and you've got your presentation cards or whatever, and you go downstairs and you get in the garage, you sit down in your car and you look at your watch and you're like, this is awesome. It's a 30-minute drive and I've got an hour to get there. Plenty of cushion. Okay. As you roll up the garage door, though, it's pouring. It's pouring rain. It's sleeting. It's as nasty as it could ever be. And as you pull onto the highway, the worst possible thing happens. You pop a flat. Now, you're a capable person. Normally, you would get up and go change it, but you're in your Sunday finery and you're on your way to this super important thing that you've been working towards. And so you call for a tow truck. Now, it takes the tow truck driver 15 minutes to get there, effectively cutting your time in half. So now we're starting to get a little worried about the clock. And the guy gets out of the truck and he walks up and knocks on the glass, bump, bump, bump. Hey, did you order for a truck? And you look at your watch. You say, yeah, I ordered a truck. And he goes, you made the right decision calling our towing company. Our towing company has been in business longer than any other towing company in towing history. We've been awarded more than any other towing company that's ever been done. Our process for hiring and training is the most extensive in the industry. Now, when you look back and you see that truck, no one else has that truck. Now, we have a proprietary engagement with Mack Truck to make that truck because we know that we're going to have to carry the most important thing in your life after your home. Your second biggest investment is your car. And that's how much we care about you. Those tires, that's a special polymer that only we have. Those tires will never slip. And my outfit is covered in a polymer that will make sure that no dirt ever sticks and no wrinkles will ever happen so that you have the most professional experience possible. Now, what are you thinking about the entire time this clown is talking? Shut up and fix my tire, right? Now, imagine that the exact same scenario, same rain, same thing, same time frame, same tow truck, same everything. Only this time the guy walks up and knocks on the glass and he says, hey, did you call for a truck? Yeah. You say, I called for a truck. He says, great. Our motto is on the road in 15 minutes or less. Sit tight. We know you got places to be. Who are you going to avoid like the plague? And who are you going to tell all your friends about? Same company, different story. That's the importance of story. And so for companies that can't get out of their own way and they're like, yeah, but it's It's about my glasses hinge, man. Look at how that hinge goes. Nobody cares about your glasses hinge. Who the hell's looking at your glasses hinge? They don't care about that. They don't care about your glasses either. They care about seeing. That's what they care about. So the whole thing is get out of your zone. Become your target audience for a second. And the tow truck story is really good about helping people get there.
Wow, that is one of my favorite stories. And I think even how we kicked off this conversation, when I asked you, I was like, you want to introduce yourself? You're like, I'm irrelevant. And I think
it's totally
in everything that you do and say it comes across and it comes through that it's really about what is this thing that you're trying to do. And it's not about us, the marketing branding people.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares a lick. They don't.
Love it.
Couldn't care less.
By the way, my family has a similar sentiment. I remember when I got promoted, I was like, I'm finally a creative director. And in an email thread, I'm sending it to my family. And I'm like, I got promoted. I'm finally, and I get a 1-word response from my sister. She's like, why?
God, you gotta love family and friends. Why?
And then
why? Don't they know you like I do? Like, what were they thinking?
My mom tags on and says, nobody cares.
That's it. It's like, goody for you. And by the way, take the trash out.
My God.
In his book, Will Smith talks about the fact that they came back from being DJ Jazzy Jeff. They went over to DJ Jazzy Jeff's house after they had been like out on tour or whatever. And Jazzy Jeff's mom was making stuff. And she's like, I need butter. Go down to the store. And they were like, we came here in a limo. And she's like, I give a shit. I need butter. Go down to the store. Listen, boy, you've been getting butter for me since you were 2 years old. You know where the store is. Go downstairs. They're like, we're going to get mobbed outside. She's like, no, you're not. Go get me some butter. And we're like, absolutely refused to treat them any differently than they'd been treated their entire life. And that's what it's supposed to be. That's the way it is. I love that. I just love that. And there's a dozen stories like it, and I love each and every one of them.
All right. So one thing that you touched on earlier was I don't get paid to be part of the problem. Now, you don't need complex solutions for complex problems. And there's like this whole like dance and, bells and whistles of like all this complicated process required to get to like customer engagement, right? I would love to get your comments and thoughts on sort of how you even approach the work and how that helps clients get out of their own way.
So if they can do it, success through simplicity is the greatest thing possible. Don't use 5 words when 3 words will do. And, when we all begin in the industry, we're trying to create new. And I think that's the struggle. We don't know enough yet. And so we think we're doing something new. And you've got to learn what's already been done so that you understand how to bend an idea into its simplest form. And you try to be super insider, like, did you see how I bent the type to do this? Like, no. It's the idea. Like the greatest idea in the world will play on a napkin note. Like you don't need the production. I saw a stick figure drawing one time that a legend has it that the guy, and I don't know who it was, that was hired to work on the Nike account. This one art director drew on like a paper bag that was in the room, the Jordan 1 Newton 0 ad concept. And it's this famous ad of Jordan in the air, legs out behind him, and he's about to slam, and it was perfect. And all it was just him in the air, ready to dunk, 35 feet up in the air like he could do. And it was just Jordan 1, Newton 0, Nike. When you can get it to that level of simplicity, when you can get it to a fundamental human truth that people are like, damn, yeah. Michael Jordan, not to stick on Jordan, but I am a Chicago boy. His I failed spot was so brilliant because it was all about like who wouldn't want to hear Jordan admit that he saw his failures, right? Like, I failed my team this many times. I missed this many shots. I did these things. And yet he's still the most amazing player ever. All you LeBron folks, sit down. Like, it's still, the whole point is, like, it's simple. You don't have to work to get it. Now, I am also a big fan of things that make you think. So I like things that you see and it makes you think for a second, and then you go, oh yeah, because the reward for having thought it through is so advantageous. But still, the construct of it is simple. So, I find that if you are patient enough, you can get through to the simple idea. The problem, I think, a lot of times is people fall in love with their first idea, which is always not the best that it can be, and they insist on trying to reinvent the wheel rather than accepting that everything under the sun has been done, and it's the question of the combination of flavors you put on the plate that makes the meal amazing. So, you're not going to reinvent cucumbers, and you're not going to reinvent steak, and you're not going to reinvent tzatziki sauce. But if you happen to put these things together in this certain way, it creates a new experience, and it's the new experience that we're looking for, not new for the sake of new. And if you haven't been in the business, that may be way too inside baseball for people to really understand, but it happens all the time.
You know what? Based on sort of all these different experiences that you had, and because I think you know how we were sort of talking about like that Mad Men era sort of Don Draper, like the creative genius. Like the person who he's like, I don't need like all of this surveys and customer whatever. Like, he's just like, my intuition, I know how people think, and and they sort of tap into that. It's a bit of an off tangent, but I would love to get your point of view on like this creative genius kind of, like, for example, there's another example I know I can think of is that even Paula Scher, when she was talking to Citibank for their logo redesign, she literally drew it on a napkin. She's like, yep, this is your logo. It's the umbrella on the T. And this is, and then she's like, the solution I had like in the meeting right then, but it took like 6 months of like process, buy-in, stakeholders to get it to finally materialize.
I think research is insanely valuable if it is done well. It's just that most groups don't do it the right way. People can't answer questions that you give them about how to change things or what they want. They can't articulate that. What they can do is they can tell you what they dislike. They can tell you what they wish for. They can tell you what they enjoy about a process. And then your job as the marketer is to say, what they're really saying is that they value this, right? It's finding out why they care. Like, so why does that matter is the question that you kind of have to keep asking yourself until you get down to a fundamental where you can't ask that anymore. In terms of people that come across as the creative brilliance, I think the reason they come across that way is because their mental Rolodex of things to reference is so vast. So they're going, if I had a dash of this idea that I've seen before and a dash of that idea, like they're doing that dinner mix that I was just referencing a second ago, but they're doing it in their head just very fast. I'll give you an example, not that I'm putting myself in that category, but a moment where something appeared to me that clearly was when we were working on music and arts back in the day before Guitar Center bought them. And the way that the brand had come up, it was a family-owned business, second or third generation, about 48 years old when we were playing in their sandbox with them. And their ideology came from the grandfather or father selling music programs to rural schools out of the trunk of his car. So as the concept evolved, it was, we are a friend to educator, we are safe to parents, and then we are cool to kids in that hierarchy. And when we were doing research on behalf of the brand, and we were doing it with teen kids, their zone was like 6 to 18. The kids came in and they were just drawing on everything. They were drawing on the papers we gave them. They were drawing on themselves. They would draw on each other if we'd let them. Like, they just they couldn't help but express themselves. And as an adult sitting in the back on the other side of the glass, I was watching that, and a memory sparked for me that you forget as an adult, which is when you're a kid, everything you do is filtered. Who you hang out with, where you go, when you have to be home, whether you study for your homework or not, right? But music is one of those things that gives you a pass. When you're doing music, you don't have to do your homework. When you're doing music, you don't have to take out the trash because you're studying music, and it's such a revered thing. And so we put together these ideas of needing to be heard and wanting freedom in a bigger way. And I wrote down, find your voice on a napkin in the back. And I was like, what these kids are actually striving for is being heard. And so one of the big recommendations that we made back to the brand at that time was we want to flip the paradigm to be cool to kids, safe to parents, and a friend to educators, because the children are the ones that are being ignored in this. And on top of that, societally speaking, they are at a place where they are, from a maturation level, ready to express themselves, but from a construct level, not given a stage in which to do it. And so, especially in that zone, they're like bursting at the seams, trying to share, trying to have an opinion, have that opinion be validated, fail so that they can find out who they are. And we, as parents and structure, are used to thinking of them as toddlers. And so, we're like protecting them and coddling them and shooting them down the thing. And they're saying, no, I'm ready. And music is one of those few places where they are allowed complete and total freedom to express themselves. And so the line that David wrote for that was so good, Dave Brocious, the brilliant copy guy that was on the account with me at the time, wrote was, it was a picture of a young teen girl sitting in the stairwell at school with a guitar propped up next to her and a coffee cup. And she was just sort of lazily sitting around. And the line was, be nice to me and I'll write a song about you. Be mean to me and I'll write 10 songs about you. And I just remember being like, the second I saw that concept, I was like, that's it. And it did. It went on to win national awards and the rest of it. But the premise that allowed us to get there came from understanding what the construct was of why they would care. And then the simplicity of the idea came from the fact that this is something we can all relate to if we'll just let ourselves remember what it felt like to be that trapped teen kid. Even if your parents were great, you still were a trapped teen kid in this respect. You didn't truly have freedom of expression. And that's exactly what we built upon. And the lines that we came up with and the campaign imagery that came out of all of that really spawned from that moment of seeing them draw on each other. And like everything else about the questions we were asking and everything else just fell away because it was so obvious what they were trying to achieve.
Beautiful. I'm just imagining
if it worked that easily every time, it would be great. And it doesn't. But at that moment, that was one of those where the bell rings and the clouds part and the angels sing for a second. And then you go, holy, that's it. There's no denying it. Now the question is how do we express it? And you'll burn days and weeks and months trying to make sure that you're expressing it just the right way that just gets you, and makes you go, ooh, right? But it starts with that fundamental understanding. And that's why I think so many companies now have it backward. They're so implementation or tactic focused over strategy. They're so impatient. And finance rules the roost and data rules the roost, and the companies have stopped learning how to relate. There's no more, I walked in and I saw her across a crowded room and my heart stopped and I had to say hello. That piece has been chopped off. And now it's, I walked across the thing and I said, you look like my kind of person, let's get married. That was the first thing out of everybody's mouth. Look at our features, look at our benefits, buy now. And we're not ready for that as consumers. We want a little of that magic of, I saw them across the room and the room got quiet and the light shone on her face and, I couldn't breathe and I couldn't sleep. That level of emotional wow that comes from a really well executed idea. is almost seen as like a dinosaur concept. And boy, isn't it. And I love that, by the way, because the more we move into the mediocrity of, well, I just pushed a button and I got a thing, the more those ideas are appreciated. And boy, when they come to the table, they're like, they just shine now because there's so few of them. It's, so it's a great time to be alive in advertising if you can stomach the PTSD of the clients having been abused. As long as that part of it is manageable, I think you're in a good place.
Yeah, I think one thing that you sort of where you ended with was, this is an internal joke I had with one of my colleagues is like, you're the best of average. So with all the thing for AI, it's like, you want to be the best of average? Go at it.
It's funny how that phrase has changed due to political correctness. I can remember back when it was the tallest man in the pygmy tribe, and that got substituted for the longest Q-tip in the box, and that's now been substituted for average, and it keeps getting watered down. But I think we're losing something in the translation of all of those because we're missing what was obvious and kind of sucker punched us when it was said to us, like, well, congratulations, you're an inch taller than everybody else, and it was like, oh crap, that idea was no good at all then, huh?
Oh my God. So now I think one of the things that I would love to unpack from some of the things that you were talking about earlier was, I think this might be really helpful for number one, for the people who are like us in the space, trying to help their clients along the journey of getting to the gold, or the client themselves who've been working with potentially the wrong kind of agency and they're suffering in a toxic relationship. So this is where it's like a point of education and learning is, so how would we get the horse to the water in terms of the client who's been in these toxic relationships? So what are the signs that they should look for to know that this is the right partner that I have on the other side? One, two, and then if you switch hats and you're like, if I'm that person taking the client across, to get them to the water, what are the things that I can do to help them get there?
I wish that I had a magic solution for that, and I don't. And as evidenced by the fact that, big soaring agencies have happened around us, and, the work that we do is the way that it is, I don't seek that. I don't want to be Droga. I don't want to be a part of the Accenture group and have, a bajillion things. I don't want to be VaynerMedia. But I think what's missing is a few things. Number one, going back to my joke about Harvard earlier, people aren't taught how to evaluate an agency. So what they do is they come in and they say, we need a blank. And I can't tell you how many pieces of business I've won by saying, why do you think you need that? And the people look at me across the table and say, you think maybe we don't? And it is the beginning of the relationship right at that moment where it's, let's not assume that you're solving the right problem. Why don't you tell me what you're trying to achieve rather than what you think you need? Because the person that comes in, the young CMO or the CEO that's, clearly trying to reach some goal and walks in the room and is like, I need a print ad. I need a great campaign. And it's like, whoa. Before you go upsetting the whole apple cart here, why do you think you need it? What's not working? Start there. That's how I start those conversations. If I was on the other side of the equation, I would immediately dismiss any agency that walked in the door and started talking about their solution right off the bat. In fact, I go so far as to say I would fire any agency that talked about themselves without being asked right off the bat. If you're educating about the process, tell me where you are, tell me what you're trying to achieve, tell me what you feel is or isn't working right now. Why are you even looking? If you're not starting there, you're not having a real conversation. What you're doing is you're replacing one bad boyfriend with another. And all you're going to do is just upset yourself and blow money and time. You've got to have somebody that knows what this thing is all about. What are we trying to achieve? Why are we trying to achieve it? Because guess what? The agency needs to be picking the client as much as the client is picking the agency. And most agencies don't have that kind of chutzpah. They're going to sit there and be like, I just want the check. We're friends, right, Spike? Like, just write the check, and then it's going to be okay. And then I promise I'm going to do everything I can do to make sure that we always stay friends, right? Because that's what this is about. No, it's not what it's about. You don't tell your dentist how to drill your tooth, and you don't tell your agency how to do their marketing. The whole point in you hiring somebody is because you don't know what the hell you're doing. If you knew what the hell you were doing, you wouldn't need to hire them in the first place. So the idea that you would then shove your hand up their back to make them talk is completely moronic. So having said all of that, I think from the client side, knowing what kinds of things to ask to judge, how do you look at a problem? If I come and I tell you this is what we're going to try to achieve, how will you validate whether we're solving the right thing? Should be the first obvious logical question that they're asking, but it ain't. And so, people come in and they trot the dog and pony show, right? It's like, we've worked with Microsoft and I don't know, so-and-so and so-and-so, and look how great we are, and look at this great creative work we did, and if we could do it for guys like that, then we could totally do it for guys like you, and that's completely stupid because you may not need that, and what you're doing may not be wrong. Maybe you're just asking the wrong question, following up on it incorrectly. You're not making the most of each of those relationships. You may not even have a problem. So, and by, one step further, they may not be the right client for you. I can't tell you how many people I've said, you don't know the lesson yet. Go burn on somebody else. Then come back to me. Be brave enough to come back to me and admit that you went out and you were like, well, your process takes 3 months. That's way too long, dude. You got to be in the digital age, man. Make it happen in 3 weeks. Nope. Not for you, not for anybody. Because you're going to fire me 6 months from now. You're going to fire me because none of this is going to work. And you're going to tell all your friends at your cocktail party about how dumb we are and about how we don't get it. I would rather earn your respect today and have you pissed off at me now and just walk away and go, he wouldn't work with me. Oh, wait, what does that mean exactly? What does it mean that he chose not to work with you? What did he see that nobody else saw? Well, I can tell you what it is. Most of the time, you're not prepared to have somebody actually guide you. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're just going to get hurt on the journey. And I'm not going to be responsible for that. I'm not going to burn your money unnecessarily. And I'm not going to waste things doing stuff that isn't actually going to help you. I don't know. I'm an old guy. I'm 55. So though, you get to a point where you're like, I'm just not going to do that anymore because I've been burned by it so many times. Why would I? And I ask the same of the people that are sitting in front of us from a client's perspective. The CMO that comes up, I'm like, listen, this is your job you're playing with. This is your reputation. This is your career. You don't want to just make a choice on us or anybody else until you know what the hell you're buying. So there's that.
By the way, I would have never guessed that you're 55. You don't look a day over I would say 45.
54.
45.
You're so sweet.
You don't
look a day over 54, man. You've got it totally nailed down.
My favorite one is, oh, you have the perfect face for radio.
My father was a disc jockey. If you look over my shoulder, you'll see Dad back there in the corner.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So Dad was a DJ his whole life, and literally. And so, yeah, I've heard that face for radio thing a bunch of times. Dad used to say it and he used to crack me up. I've got a client right now who has a new one that's a southern version of that makes me laugh, which is his face is uglier than homemade soap, which the first time I heard it, I almost couldn't keep it together on the call. Like, it was so funny. And I was like, first off, that you'd have the stones to call somebody that in my presence. But secondly, I mean, hot damn, that's just funny. That's funny every way it can be funny. Uglier than homemade soap. Funny shit.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's so good.
That is so good. That is so good. Oh my God. Anyway. That's a campaign waiting to be happening.
No joke.
Oh my God. Okay. Got to keep it together. So
hang on, Paul. Don't lose it, man. Keep together. Stay on target.
Yeah. So, okay. So circling back to, I think you put it really well in terms of like, okay, what are the telltale signs that a client can look for? You dropped so many nuggets in there. And I think there's also like, when you're sort of kind of living, breathing and doing these things intuitively, there's a lot of things that people, and you just kind of intuitively just run past them. But for somebody else, they're like, oh shit. Like I wasn't even thinking about that. Like I'll give you the example, like when the moment somebody comes to you and says, oh, we need this. Instead of you being like, okay, here's the brief. Let's just start filling out a vendor form and let's get into solution mode. Or, the other thing that you were talking about, actually, hold on. Let me just pause here first. Let me expand on this. The first thing is, you wouldn't go to a doctor and be like, oh, I need surgery. And the doctor's like, okay, lie down here. Let's start. Right. And so it's really like pausing and having them reflect, introspect, and really having them to think deeply about the problem, and even challenging them and taking them on that journey of asking interesting, curious questions to help them really understand why they're there in the room with you at that time. So that was number one, really helpful, is that pause. Instead of saying yes, be like, wait, why? And being okay with saying no. These are all great signs of a true partner. Okay.
Listen, you just said something that needs repeating. No one's willing to say no anymore, ever, anywhere. I was reading a thing on LinkedIn today that was talking about, oh shoot, I should pull it up because I don't have his name off the top of my head. There's a famous story. If it wasn't Bob Hoffman, I forget who it was that did it, about the matzah company. Do you know this story about him? It was like back in the 50s, and he went in and he had this great campaign idea for matzah. And the guys that were running this thing started saying how they wanted to change the idea. And this guy grabs the concepts, and he's up on like a New York, high rise, throws open the window and goes out on the ledge and says, "You make the bread, I make the ads." And they were like, get back in. And he's like, I'm not coming in until now. I am sure that this has been glorified and done whatever. But the bravado anymore of somebody being willing to say, you hired me because you don't know what you're doing. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. And they justify it about 54 different ways to Sunday about how and why they are suddenly experts. Well, I'll know it when I see it. No, you don't. If you knew it when you saw it, you would have created it on your own. You can't create it on your own. That's why we're talking in the first place. So sit down, shut up, and let us do our jobs. And I think it's really difficult for people to let go of control, especially when there's big dollars going around. And it's interesting. We were working with a company that I shall not name, but we had an idea that they all agreed was so strategically on point. They were like, it's brilliant strategy. It's phenomenal. And then we gave them an execution that was so as a result of it, like if this, then that, and it was perfectly simple and intuitive and a part of our already existing human behavior and the rest of it. And they were like, well, we don't like it. And I said, why don't you like it? And they were like, well, we think it won't work. I'm like, but you realize that's like saying, I don't think Novocaine's going to work, so don't give me a shot. Like, you don't, what the hell do you know? You don't know? Like, sit down and take the Novocaine shot, because I promise you what you're going to get without it is going to be a whole lot worse than what I'm about to give you. So, it's like, this is the thing. And what does my heart good, and I remember reading this a number of years ago, Alex Bogusky, all the way up at CP, whatever. He was saying, look, I stand in rooms. I'm being paid $20x million a year. I'm the highest paid creative on the face of the planet. Even I have to stand in a room with all this work behind me and all the accolades and the thousands of people and the Adweek articles and like that. And even I got to stand there and be like, dude, you don't know what you're doing. I have to argue with it. And you would think by the time you got up there, and I would like to think Lee Clow did it too, although I never really heard Lee Clow complain about it. But I've got to believe that even Lee was still like, Lee, the man, was standing there going, all right, let's walk through this again. Like, let me explain why this is going to work. Yes, I got Ridley Scott to talk about milk. Let me explain why you need a 70 millimeter cinematic guy to bring together the idea of someone having peanut butter stuck on the roof of their mouth when they get called by a local radio station to win $1 million. Let me explain why that's actually going to work. The 1984 spot, Steve Jobs said no to that. Where's the beef? They said no to that. It tested poorly. Like, don't even get me started on consumer testing. But you're not supposed to know. You're hiring for an outcome. Now, if you didn't get the outcome, whole different story. But how we get you there, if you knew how to do it, you'd already have done it. So I think that's the greatest, like, if you want to talk about the ulcer causer of our industry, the reason that there are alcoholics in our industry is not the work. It's not taming the blank page. It's managing the incessant, constant, like, predictable repetition of clients insisting that they know something that everybody knows they don't. That's where that angst comes from, is no one will just let you do it. And the funny thing is, like, you don't question the person that makes food, and you could die if you ate it. Like, no one's going to die from advertising, but you don't question the person putting brakes in your car, and you could die driving your car, but you gladly sit and argue and debate and shove your hand into the mix of marketing. Like, when you really sit down and think about it, what do you think you know? Like, anyway, so it just cracks me up. The nuance and the structure of how to bake these cakes is something that every chef knows, right? And people that don't are like, well, you just whisk some stuff up and then threw it in an oven, right? And it's like, yeah, go right ahead. And, you know, when you get a dog biscuit instead of a cake, don't come crying to Argentina. Like, you know, this is where we are. So anyway, did I accidentally go off on a diatribe?
Now, I would be curious now, because with the span of, you know, the career that you've had, could you personally, or I don't even know if you can share any of this, but if you could recall any moment in time where somebody, like one of the examples that you took, where somebody's like pushing the big red button just at the point of go live, when everything's been done, everything's been agreed on, but at the last minute they get like that inner inertia, hesitance, and how you help them kind of overcome it? Or do you have
sometimes you can't? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you build the Ferrari and it sits in the garage. It happens. And I don't think it just happens. I just don't think anybody talks about it. But the truth of the matter is that it happens for everybody. And I imagine that it happens up at, you know, BBH, and I imagine it happens wherever, where, you know, a great idea gets to a place and people just freak. You know, I know that there are stories, a lot of stories about agencies back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s, when big ideas were still sort of normal, of agencies going, look, we'll pay for it. They would pay for the media to prove a point. And in some cases, in the terms of Super Bowl spots, millions of dollars. And if you've got the coin to be able to do that, you know, if your wallet's fat, it's easy top, thank you. You know, and you're willing to pay the freight, then you can do that. And I think all of us wish that we could, because we would never put, those of us with integrity would never put something in front of a client that we didn't fully believe was going to achieve the goal and surpass the goal, because we want the win. So the idea that we wouldn't put our best foot forward is ridiculous. But I can tell you that it happens, and it happens with fair regularity. 10, 15%, you know, will get to a point and be like, oh my gosh, that seems like a lot of money, or oh my gosh, I just don't know, or and they will have completely bought into the strategy, completely understood the rationale, completely understood the creative direction, completely understood everything, and then they just can't do it. Like, you know, they're in the parachute, they're on the plane, they're at 10,000 feet, the guy is there holding their hand, and they just can't jump out of the plane. They just can't do it. And so when that happens, you know, I used to argue, but here's what I learned is that you can never persuade anybody of anything. If you're in a place where you find yourself trying to persuade somebody, number one, you're the one at fault. And number two, you're in the wrong room. You need to stop, because you can't persuade. Even if you do, you might persuade them. There's a good chance, if you're a good talker, you might persuade them. But they will be so full of doubt. They'll be so watching every little thing to see, I knew it was going to break. I knew it wasn't going to work. Like, they're so predisposed to it not working that even if it works, they're going to tell themselves that it was a fluke and they'll never repeat it. You might as well not waste your time. So it's hard. You know, you've got to be willing to stand for what you stand for, and you need to be willing to stand for what you stand for, even if it means that you don't get to buy a private island. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're taking money, you're taking candy from a baby, right? Like you're putting lipstick on a pig. You're saying either I'm going to convince you and then I'm going to do something I wanted to do because I don't care about the outcome, or I'm willing to compromise what we stand for in order to keep the money, at which point you lose who you are. So, again, this is an old man's argument, and young people that are hearing this are going to be like, he's nuts. If you just go back and do it again, you can get them on board. And I applaud their willingness to bang a nail through a board with their forehead. But having scarred myself a few times doing that, let me just save you all the thing. Nothing new under the sun. It's not gonna happen. If you look real close, you can see this little nail spot. Bang, bang. Yeah.
And this kind of parlays back into sort of what you were saying earlier, is that you don't pay me to, do all,
be a part of the problem.
Yeah, to do all the shit that you were already doing, right? So I think so if I go back to that sort of, when a client is potentially looking for the right partner, and then for people who want to be the right partner, is you want to be at the onset, not trying to sell, not trying to persuade, but really challenge the client to self-reflect and think. And then, because if it comes from them, then it's their idea, and it's a less likely chance of that hitting resistance or turbulence, right?
I think the bigger thing I'm looking for is, are they willing to be great? This is a checkbox question in my head. Are you willing to be great? Everybody says they want to be great. If I had a dime for every time somebody came and sat down in front of me and was like, we want to be the Apple of our industry. And at this point in my career, I just go, uh-huh. Because I'm like, you have no idea what it takes to be the Apple of your industry. You have no idea. I remember reading a study one time that was talking about how Apple's efficiency experts would go to a third world country and teach them how to stand on an assembly line so that they maximize the movement of the people when making a product, so that the other tablet manufacturers couldn't hit a competitive price.
Holy smokes.
That's the thinking that goes into becoming that kind of powerhouse, the corners you have to bend if we didn't cut, the things you have to be willing to do, the willingness you have to succeed, to become billion-dollar status, is not human for the rest of us. My son is a power lifter, and it's kind of a funny story, but so he's 16 and he's super into powerlifting, and not like in a joke way. He was just at nationals for his first time and took second, and was like lifting 500 and some pounds off the ground. Like,
Holy.
Right. And there's only a handful of people that are like able to do that sort of thing. But the discipline he has to do that thing, which I watch in awe, because I don't have that discipline in that kind of way. He was on a wrestling team and wound up going to a thing and not making weight one time several years ago. And he lost because the guys that he suddenly was against were much bigger than him and whatever. And he got in the car, and I just remember he didn't say a word for a while. And then like a couple days later, he came to me and he said, "How do you work out?" And I was like, "Well, why do you want to know?" And he was like, "Well, I don't ever want to be in a position like that again. Like I'm hefty and I don't like that." And he just decided at like 10 or 11, I'm not eating anything bad for me anymore. And, as a parent, you're like, yeah. And then we went to the doctor about 6 months later, and, they've got like the growth height weight curve, and they talk about the percentiles. So Finnegan was like this, and then his line dropped. And the doctor saw this and was like, whoa, whatever you're doing, stop. This is unhealthy. And I called him in and I said, "Finn, lift up your shirt." And Finn lifted it up and had a perfect six pack. And the doctor went, and Finnegan was like, "I'm getting into bodybuilding." Like, he was like, "Wait, what?" And for the last several years, consistent as time. Up the same time, gym the same time, eats the same way, never, ever, ever violates it. He's at a birthday party, cupcake comes around. He's like, when was the last time I had a cupcake? 3, 4, 5 months ago? Maybe. Special enough event? Maybe. A piece of pizza on rare occasion? Maybe. Everything else, complete and total dedication to this. And it's amazing to watch. That's what it takes to be great at something. Most of the businesses that say that they want to be great that way, that want to be a Liquid Death or that want to become a Dollar Shave Club or want to be an Apple or a Nike, they have nowhere near that kind of discipline to be able to come in and say, hey, I'm going to look at every single inch and realize that it's not some big silver bullet thing I'm going to do. It's the discipline of saying it's an inch that makes a mile, and I'm going to get that inch every day over and over and over again until I get there. And the simple truth of the matter is that most businesses talk a big game, but they're not willing to be great. So the idea of getting them to be better and in a sizable way, for most companies, a 30 or 40% jump in a single year, doubling in a single year for smaller companies that can actually manage that is like, it's mind blowing. Now, are they suddenly Nike? No. But as far as teaching them how to advance in a way that's truly meaningful, for most of them, that's better than being Apple or Nike, because what you've taught them is how to grow. I spend most of my time helping businesses figure that out. I don't care what size they are. I care what level of stuck they are. So I'll work with any business that is growth-minded and stuck and is hungry to be great. As long as that's the criteria, I don't care if it's a napkin note startup looking for friends and family money, or it's a $500 million organization that wants to be, taking over the world. What's the common thread in them is they're growth-minded and willing. And that anymore, that's rare. I think that used to be a whole lot more regular than it is now.
I'm totally blown away, by the way, the story of your son and sort of how dedicated, focused, and committed he is to this. My sister's also, by the way, a power lifter.
Oh, cool.
So odd. But okay, hold on. So, there's a couple of things that come to mind from those 2 points. And this is sort of a 2-part thing. Number one, is the right person to be in the room with to know that this is a project that I can actually take on. And 2, the idea of collaboration versus that single-minded focus founder. So it's like a 2-part sort of.
Yeah. So the answer to the first question is whoever is able to make a decision. And it doesn't take long to run into the people who think that they have the ability to do it, but don't. So, if you're sitting in a room and there's a CEO, but the CEO is married and the spouse is the person that actually has the who has a COO or a CFO role, but actually makes the decision, like, you have to know where that's going to be. And you would think that would just be small businesses, right? Like 10 million and under. No, family-owned businesses like Michael's, or whatever, these like larger entities that are run by brothers or run by families or whatever, Johnson & Johnson, whatever, like there's familial influence and politics that exist in those environments that you have to be willing to take into consideration. There's nothing more threatening to me than the CMO that has to present to a leadership board. Like, I hear that and I go, I don't know. Because you're going to have to show me that you actually have enough of their ear that when we show up and they have chosen not to be a part of the education process about why we made the choices we made to get there, and they're like, just give me a 10-minute summary on why we're doing it, that scenario fails far more than it succeeds. Because what happens is a bunch of people that have not had any insight to the process or the discovery or anything else suddenly say, well, I need to put my fingerprint on it to feel like I've got ownership. And the whole thing gets muddied down into nothing, which brings me to your second point, which is it possible to lead by team? I think on rare occasions, like South Park or the Coen brothers or whatever, where you've got like some kind of partnership, best friends, family members, brothers, sisters, something like that, where you've got some communication shorthand where the two of them are in lockstep. They understand where the thing is going. They have a clear, conscious vision of what it is, then yes. But in every other circumstance, in my opinion, it is a single individual that is absolutely dedicated to reaching a particular shore, and they are willing to do what it takes to get other people to see the vision. And they know that the more they give the recipe to other cooks in the kitchen, the more those cooks are going to try and make it their own, and it's going to water down the soup. So, I don't think that there are a lot of people like that left in the world. I think that there's a lot of committee because it makes people feel safe and it makes them feel included and it makes them feel all those other little sticky things. And that's all great, but that doesn't lead to greatness. That leads to communities of feeling good. And that's great. But if a business's role is to scale and a business's role is to make a difference, then in my experience, those things are happening much faster and with much greater precision when a single vision is being honored.
If you could recall any moment in time where, you were faced with not having the right decision maker and how you sort of overcome that, or, and this would be just helpful for, the people who are sort of on our side of the fence, trying to engage with clients, and could be educational for them. And then two, from a client side, why that, what about that is actually so helpful and useful? One, I can say right off the bat, what you just touched on is the decision making.
Why is the most important thing we convey? The work is secondary. Like truly, the work, the execution, the implementation, the tracking, all of that is way secondary to understanding the why. If people don't understand why we're recommending what we're doing, why we see it as an advantage, why we think, like, if you don't get that part across to them, you're never going to get anywhere because it becomes subjective. So anchoring, putting your back foot on, however you want to think about it, creating a foundation in why is critical. And that, that's why I say if it's, I'm working with a CMO and their team, and then they say to me, when we're done with this, then I'll take it and I'll present it to our internal team. I'm like, no, that's not going to work for me. And the reason it's not going to work is because this is what will happen. Like, I'll just write it down on a piece of paper now and put it in an envelope and mail it to you. And then when it happens, you can open the envelope and say, oh my gosh, how did he know? And because people don't change. That structure's the same. It's been the same since Cleopatra. It ain't going to change. It's going to be the same 50,000 generations forward from today. It ain't going to change. So if that's the situation, why in the world would you be dumb enough to put yourself in it? Like, hi, I want a root canal with no Novocaine, please. Like, why would I go there? I just don't. I don't want to go there. I just don't. There are other businesses that will actually appreciate what we do. I would rather not waste my time. The answer is stand up for yourself. That's the here. You want the answer? There's the answer. Stand up for yourself. Say no. I remember a number of years ago that McDonald's decided, maybe you remember this, McDonald's decided not to pay their agency. Do you remember that? Do you remember when McDonald's did that? They were like, we're not going to pay any agencies to pitch our stuff. We're going to ask everybody to do all of the creative work for free. And then if we hire you, we'll pay you retrospectively for the work. And agencies did it. And I'm like, what is wrong with you?
God.
What in the world is wrong? What in the world are you thinking? Why? Do you know what you're doing to every other agency when you flat back like that? Like, what in the world is wrong with you? And yet they did it. Now, a couple of them, to their credit, were like, we understand that we're at the altar of McDonald's, but no. And the rest of us were standing on the sidelines applauding them. And then two, the incumbent, and I forget who the other one was, were like, well, we'll go. We'll do it. We'll do what you asked us. I was like, you wimps. You absolutely disgusting wimps. What in the world are you thinking? You're teaching everybody that you're going to give everything for free. You desperate, oh God, it just left a film all over me. I was like, you guys are a disgrace to the industry. You don't have any respect for yourself or your craft or your talent or the process or anything else. You'll lay down for anything. And that's all finance driven. That's fear driven and finance driven. If we don't do it, someone else is going to do it. Then let them. And when McDonald's gets crap out of it, then there you go. Or maybe not. Maybe they get lucky and they get it. But you know what? They will never have another agency pitch them, because why in the world would you? Like, no, just flat no. A number of years ago, we had an opportunity and I almost fell for it. Bon Jovi, and I can't even begin to remember now how it happened, but somebody that I knew somebody, and Bon Jovi was looking for, not Bon Jovi, John himself, but the people running his brand were looking for an agency to give them a new CD cover. That shows how old I am. And so they were like looking around. And so I get this phone call. And it was like, John Bon Jovi's team would like to talk to you. And I was like, holy shit. No kidding. Really? I was like, yeah, I'll take that call. So I got on the phone hoping that John was going to be on. John wasn't there. And I was like, because that would be really cool. I was like, hey, man, I'll get to say hi to John Bon Jovi and tell him I dig his music. It'd be fun. So I'm sitting there and the guys get on. They're like, yeah, so this is the thing. This is for Bon Jovi. And yeah, so we're going to need you to do like 8 to 10 designs. And then we're going to have like 5 other agencies do that too. And then, you know, if you get it, then we'll pay you for it. And I almost said yes. And a friend of mine who also owned an agency, who also had some objectivity, came to me and was like, are you nuts? Like, I know it's Bon Jovi, but are you nuts? You can't do this. Like, you do award-winning work. What's wrong with you? And I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. And thank you. Because I almost did it. I almost was like, okay. And then I was like, wait a second. No, not even for Bon Jovi. Right? Like, no. If you want good work, then you're going to pay for it. And if what you're willing to do is just say, well, somebody who's hungry or desperate or young or up and coming or whatever is willing to do it, and that's okay with you, that's great. But then don't come around on the other side when someone makes a copy of your CD on a mixtape and gives it to their girlfriend and bark and scream about how, you know, that's unfair, right? Like, let's make sure that we're apples to apples here. Like, you know, Paying for stuff is paying for stuff. So I don't know. I don't know. Again, another soapbox issue for me, but I think you just stay away from things that are going to hurt you. And that's one. And there are a lot of businesses out there that are proud of their agency work, and they're pleased about the partnership, and the chemistry is strong and good, and you can build a foundation on something that will last a long time based on mutual respect. They have great ideas for a business. You have great ideas on how to promote it, and the teamwork between those two things is in sync, and it's positive. And when the team falls down, and they rally together to come and build something stronger in its place. And that's a real relationship between an agency and a brand. And I personally don't feel the need to be a part of something that's not going to support that.
That actually, you know what would be really fun to do a quick role play of this is that what would the present you do if, let's say, you get that phone call today? How would you deal with that? What would you do differently this time?
This time I would just say, it sounds like a wonderful opportunity for somebody, and I can't tell you how pleased I am, but we're not a good match. Like, that's as long as it would have been. It would have been, thank you very much, but we won't do that. I'm sure that you'll find someone that will, and I hope that you get a good thing. And at this point, unlike then where I was actually angry about it because I was young and hot-headed and, you know, like we all are, now I would just say, there goes my hero, right? Watch him as he goes. Like, it's like, I'm going to step aside from the bull, and I'm going to let the bull go run into whatever it's going to run into. And, you know, nothing more, nothing less.
No, I love it. I love it. You're go. Like, this is great, but all the best.
Yeah, exactly. There's a great story about the founder of Southwest, or the CEO of Southwest. I forget what his name now is. Shoot, I hate it when I tell stories and I don't have the details. Anyway, you can look it up. It's a real thing. But somebody called and wrote a letter and complained about the fact that Southwest was no frills. And it was like, you can't do this. Like, you don't have drinks, you don't have peanuts, you don't have meals, you don't have forks, you don't have this and that. And the answer back was, we'll miss you. And I was like, that's the lesson for the ages, right? We'll miss you. Like, I'm not going to waste any more time on it. I'm not going to waste any more ink on it. Lick the stamp, put it on, close the envelope, and out the door it goes. And I so appreciate that you don't agree with me. And I'm sorry that we won't be the thing that you want, but there are plenty of fish in the sea that happen to like Southwest just the way it is, and we'll miss you. And good luck being on Delta or American or, back in the day, TWA or whatever it was.
You're basically, in different ways saying, and you're also trying to help clients do this for themselves. You're not for everyone. Like one of the examples that you were taking on the TV show when you were there, you're talking about the sleep, they own the anxiety. And so
sleep. Yeah. Love Sack. I think it's called Love Sack. The one that talks about we're for people who have anxiety and we help cradle them.
Instead of saying like, we're for everyone. Right. So even in your case, what you're saying is like, hey, you know what? I'm not for everyone. What you're looking for, you'll probably find somewhere else. Right. And so that's the ability to say no. And that's the risk that even businesses struggle with. Actually, that's really cool that you're actually through and through living, breathing that philosophy, even how you conduct yourself. So it's not something that you're doing to clients. It's just who you are as a person.
Well, I don't think that sounds a lot more heroic than I think it is. There are benefits and there are detriments to that, right? I could be a lot wealthier if I was just willing to do it. Right. And this is, I mean, ask anybody who knew me when I was a teenager, like this was just who I was from the beginning. Right. Like I had a teacher one time that added wrong on the board and I happened to be a math nerd. And I was like, 5 + 2 doesn't equal 8. And I got sent to the principal's office and I was like, that's dumb. 5 + 2 doesn't equal 8 no matter where you are. And she was like, I don't make mistakes. And I was like, well, you just did. And you're going to, have a whole classroom of people who have written this down who are going to wonder later why in the hell the answer's wrong because you wrote it down wrong. So, I mean, this is like, I would love to say that this was something that was sort of crafted or created over time. But the truth of the matter is that it's just kind of the way that I see the world. Like, I don't think it should be that people who have the ability to do something are curtailed by people who don't just because it's polite. Like, I just don't think that that's right. I just don't. And I don't treat other people that way. Or at least I try really hard not to. If I do, apologies to anybody hearing the pod. But my goal here is to just say, I know I don't know everything. I don't know a lot. And so when I come into contact with somebody who says, this is how we do things, I give a very long leash about then this is your expertise. Like, if I'm interested in it, I'll ask you questions. But if I'm not, and you're here to fix the furnace and I really don't need to know how the furnace works, I just need to know that it isn't right now and that you're going to fix it, then I'm not going to sit and hover over you and give my 2 cents about how you pull it out of the attic and screw it down outside. I'm just going to say, it didn't work. I wanted it to work. Now it does work. If it breaks, then we'll have another conversation. Isn't that fair? Like, isn't that what we all kind of just hope for at a fundamental level? We'll be appreciated for the things that we can do and that we'll appreciate others for what they can. I mean, I think that's fair play, I guess. I don't know. That's my definition anyway.
So now, okay, hold on. So I want to switch gears a little bit. And
all right, awesome.
Okay, so right out of the gate, here, and then this is like in no specific sequence, but there are like high level ideas and powerful ideas to sort of keep in mind. This is really relevant for the people who are helping clients. And then this is also really helpful for clients looking for a true partner, right? So one is, simplicity, right? That's like at the heart of everything that we've been talking about. You don't need complicated process to solve complicated problems. The other thing is that you've talked about is don't be the person that gets paid to be part of the problem. I love that. I'm going to use that forever. That is
good. So good. Please spread it around.
I'm going to spread it. Yeah. And then, there is no B2B, B2C. People are people. I love that too. That is chef's kiss. And then don't sell, be willing to say no. Instead, advise and guide instead, right? That's a much better play to have. And that's a sign for somebody looking for, the right agency. Are they just saying yes, 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 let's do this? Or are they challenging you, right? I really like this one thing that you've done, and you've really sort of manifested it in sort of your own personal brand, is, the dominate/win. And so it's like when you were talking, you were saying like, Paul, I'm actually always looking for this checkbox. Are they willing to be great? And that sort of manifests in your personal brand as well, where you're like dominate and crossed out win. I love that.
Yep. Don't just win, dominate.
Yeah. And then I'll have two more points here. So one is, you don't get greatness by committee, right? You have to lean into that sort of vision and focal point of that one person sort of almost kind of going there. So like, where's the center of gravity? You have to kind of levitate towards that. That is relevant for somebody who's trying to work with a business. So you have to find where that is, like the CMO example that you were taking. And then the other side of that is, if you're a business owner and you want to be great, you have to actually take charge. You can't deploy a whole bunch of people who are yes men or whatever, right, to get that done. So that's kind of covers that. And then, and then finally, I think I'm going to summarize it with the really beautiful quote that you had was, "We'll miss you."
It's the most freeing thing in the world. We'll miss you. Sorry about our opinions not aligning. We'll miss you.
It's so beautiful. It's so poetic in the way that like those three words. Okay. So now, is there anything that you would want to add to the list that I just shared? Anything that I missed? And then we can go into the rest of the conversation. And I think what I'll do is I'll probably start to hit descent about 20 minutes before 3. And so we can end and wrap up in time. And so you can be, out in the sun, enjoying some. I saw that. I think this is sort of an off tangent, totally different question. I think I saw one video of you where you were recording in your car. Do you have a 2-seater car?
I have a 911. So it's 2+2. So in the back, there are seats, but they're not real seats. They're insurance seats.
I had a hunch.
Yeah, I'm a big German. Like Volkswagens, Audis, Porsches. I love them all.
Oh, I love it. Which 911, by the way, do you have?
I have a 2013 911 convertible.
Oh, see, saying no works, kids. Listen to Bill.
I love it. I bought it from a little old man in Wisconsin. And it was like I had been looking for. It was just what I wanted. It was 28,000 miles on it, 10 years old. It was like perfect. Yeah. And it sat in a garage and like it was perfectly maintained. The guy lived 4 miles from the dealership. Like it was perfect. I've been looking for that one for a while. I pounced on that. I was like, that's it. That's mine. Must have.
He was basically keeping the car ready and, clean and maintained for you. This whole
pretty much. Yeah.
And taking
he didn't know,
appreciation.
but it's all good. Yeah. And I appreciated it all the way. I drove it back from Milwaukee 14 hours to drive it home. I was like, wow, that's okay. Got up at 5 a.m. and started driving. It was great.
Oh, the sound of that engine.
It was the best. See, that's kind of an inside joke with our family because my wife drives a Tesla, and anybody who knows me knows that I'm a total sheet metal whore. Like I'm just a whore. Like I've owned more cars. Anyway, I will never cheat on my wife, but I will cheat on my car is the joke my buddy in high school made. Anyway, but one of my son's friends, I also have 2 daughters. It just, these stories happen to get Finnegan's name out as opposed to them. But one of Finn's friends one day saw me sitting in the car and goes, "Hey, rev the engine for me." And I was like, that's it. I was like, I'll never drive this golf cart again, ever. I was like, that's it. And Finnegan was in tears when he got in the car. He was like, boy, did he know how to hurt you. I was like, yeah, he did. Rev the engine for me. Jackass kid. I was like, number one, I can't believe that didn't come out of my son's mouth first. I'm actually upset with Finnegan that he didn't think to say it first. I was like, your friend got that one over on you, buddy. That was a really good zinger. He knew me inside and out. He was like, yeah, man, rev the engine for me. Oh, still hurts. Still hurts. Rev the engine.
Oh
Can't
my
do
God.
It. No.
$100,000 gone to zero in seconds.
Don't care how fast it is. I want to hear it. I really I just need the engine. I got to have it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a Porsche guy, I mean, the sound of the engine, like I've spent like hours and hours on the Porsche website just listening to the Porsche sounds.
Right.
They have the sound
there.
I
think all of us do.
Oh my God. They're so, they're meditative.
Yeah.
Anyways,
we were on a trip in LA and passed by the Ferrari dealership, and like my head was so glued. My wife and kids were like, "Just go in, just go." I was like, "Do you mind?" They were like, "No." Like, go ahead. I walk inside, and the woman that was at the front desk was like, "Can I help you?" I was like, "I'm just here to drool." She was like, "Take a lap." So much fun. I was like walking around just like, oh, and I want it in this color and I'd like it that way. And like, just scheming. I got out in the car, this smile like behind my head.
I have a fun story. I was sitting at a coffee shop minding my own business, and there's a old gentleman, I think maybe like early 60s. And he was just sitting there looking at the Porsche website. And, it kind of caught my eye. I was like, oh, you're looking at, the Carrera 4S. He's like, yeah, that's what I'm looking at. He's like, I'm like, obviously you're thinking of buying, right? So I'm like, old white guy, probably a lot of money, wants to buy himself a Porsche. He's like, yeah. He's like, I just retired, so I'm just thinking of getting myself a Porsche. I'm like, I was like, are you aware of Singer Porsches? The Resto mods? And he's like,
yeah, right.
And he's like, wait, what is that? I opened it to him. He's like, Paul, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble.
You've
now.
Ruined that man for the rest of his life. Ruined him.
He's like, I'm going to have a different conversation back home today.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, okay. So yeah, we were recording a podcast, by the way.
To answer your question, is there anything that we missed? Yes, we missed one thing. Businesses don't realize that they need to stand for one thing. They think that what's going to happen is when they stand for one thing, that they're going to lose opportunity. But that's not how consumers think. The more you're known for one thing, the more consumers seek you out because you are great at one thing. And that's why Volvo being about safety and Porsche being about performance works, is because if Volvo was trying to be luxurious and performance and safety and resale value and this and that and the other, consumers say, well, that's too much. Like, I can't, if I said, what's the difference between Honda, Toyota, and Volkswagen, the answer most people would give is Volkswagen is the brand that's more fun. And that's because Volkswagen has done this whole thing, right, about being the fun brand. And so it's still reliable, and it's still, the things that you could get from a Honda or a Toyota, but it's got a playful nature, and that playful nature is what sets that brand apart.
It's amazing how much dollars, how much time they've spent and invested. Like, for example, Volvo with one word, safety, BMW, driving pleasure, or the Mercedes luxury, right? So you're right. Like, they just stand for that one thing, and they've like really hammered it into our heads that that's what we stand for. But then they also deliver, like, even like all the stuff that the way they build the car, the way they show the tests of the car, like, falling from a crane or those crash tests that they're doing. So it's not just about like we've been discussing, it's not just about the communication, but it's like through and through, inside out strategy, even how we build the product, how we train our employees, like the Apple example that you were taking. So it's about what it takes to be that great. So love it. Now, I know that a lot of the things that you talk about in terms of whether that's B2B or B2C, a lot of this when we talk about brand, it's especially for business owners or the people working on these things. It's a little bit easier for us to imagine and anchor ourselves when it's actually a physical product. But when it comes to service based, like when you're thinking a consulting service or any service based business, it's harder to wrap our head around brand and what that can look like. How do you see it is what I'm curious about. Or how do you see it differently or not differently? So
I don't think it's different at all. When you think about, and this is one of the more famous examples, but when you think about FedEx, which was the dread combination of service and B2B, it absolutely positively has to be there overnight, was a perfect example of what was the pain point that they could use over mail or UPS. And, how could they do it in a way that was human, right? How could they make it fun and playful and almost like a commodity brand? And that's exactly what they did. Their launch of that concept back in the day, with the fast talking guy that was, you got to go to Philadelphia, and then we're going to go from Philadelphia to Taiwan, and we're going to go from Taiwan to, whatever. And he was talking to everybody and he was doing all these things. And he's like, I got to get these packages from here to there and here to there and here to there and here to there. And they zeroed in on that. And they said, look, this is the thing that these people are suffering about at their desk. And we're willing to do something about it. I don't see any difference between that and the world's hottest hot sauce or selling anticipation for ketchup for Heinz or whatever. It's the exact same thing. And that's why these labels are so destructive, because when you take the time to learn what the pain point is and you build your story around that, the connection that you make with the people that you're trying to reach is so strong because it's relevant to them. And there's no difference in relevance for any of those different groups. There just isn't. I think it's just been so built up in everybody's mind that they just take it for granted that, well, it's different because it's business. Hogwash. It's not. Yeah, I know. It's my dad's word, right? Hogwash. When was the last time you heard that?
Probably I haven't heard that.
Been a coon's age.
Actually, there's a lot of things I haven't heard in a long time on this in this conversation, which has been a treat, actually.
I said in a video one time, you're all dressed up. I was telling the tow truck story. I said, you're all dressed up in your finery. And I got like a bunch of messages back. They're like, the WTF finery. I was like, your finery, man. It's like your ruffles. This just cracks me up. There was a time when I tried really hard not to talk that way because I was afraid I was going to be looked at funny. And then I was like, actually, that's what makes it interesting. I was like, so I'm going to go back and start putting them back in again.
Oh my God.
My belief is that when you're done, when you hit 50, all of your character flaws become character traits. So when you hit 50, you're at the halfway point. And so I remember at my birthday, I was like, by the way, all the shit you guys have been telling me to work on all these years, now it's like, that's my favorite piece of china because it's got a ding in it. Like, that's how I want you to look at this now. It's not that I'm not working on it. It's just that I've gotten used to them. Like they're my foibles. It's okay.
Life is such an interesting journey. Like first you're trying to, figure out who you are. You're trying to fit in. And then you get to a point where you're like, I just don't give a shit.
Yeah, I'd rather fit out, I think, than fit in. It's okay. Everybody can say, wow, Bill's really funny this way. Yeah, he is. It's all good.
So once you've sort of gone ahead with the executive suite or the founder or the owner, and you've all agreed on a focal point. And then, so I think the first part of that is brand internalization. Like, how do you help them facilitate and, take people along on that journey on this is our focal point?
So this is one of those things that I think people don't do well. They really don't do it well. And most agencies don't think about internal adoption. And we've run into it a number of times too, which is why we pay more attention to it now. I think that once the leadership team that's responsible for bringing it to life has adopted it and has become comfortable with the idea, now it's time to take it internally The internal folks need to be brought through the same opportunity presentation and education, and then the same presentation of the ultimate brand materials, so that they understand how these things came to life. I think what happens a lot of times is the agency is given its last check and they say, okay, great, we're going to go do it. Or more frequently, the agency is put on external communications and the business is somehow supposed to bring it internally. And that really has varying degrees of success. And as a person that works for Deloitte, I imagine that you see that all the time, because you've got new implementation or direction or strategy that comes from either your team inbound or someone else's team, and you're there to help facilitate adoption. That's a really, most agencies, I just don't think pay attention to that side of the equation, and it's critical. You can have the best concept in the world, but if the team doesn't support it, or if they don't understand how to talk to it, or they don't understand why they're talking to it, they won't adopt it for very long. And if they don't adopt it, it won't succeed. And if it doesn't succeed, the blame becomes a boomerang back to the agency for having created something that wasn't correct, or to the CMO for having not done their job properly, when that's not necessarily what it was, but instead it was, just a problem that came as a result of their not having thought through how they were going to implement it, if that makes any sense.
No, that totally makes sense, actually. And that's what I was curious about, because, there's a lot of people who, and this is the problem with this is the awesomeness and sort of the downside of social media, is that we have a whole bunch of people talking about marketing, branding, all these things. And it's so surface level. They like one example that you took at the beginning of the conversation was so beautiful, was, they got their people to go stand at those conveyor belts and look at how do they work, as part, it goes deep, brand goes deep. And it's how shit gets done. It's not just about how you're showing up. And especially if, the first example that you took, the reputation and expectation. So you're setting the expectation of this is what you're going to get. And if your customer service doesn't deliver on that, or your teammate, whatever, doesn't deliver in that way, doesn't show up in that way, like even Four Seasons hotels, for example.
There's actually a bigger implication that comes as a result of this too, which is some of the people on the team might not make the journey. And I think that's a big part of the reason why there's such struggle in it, right? If you pivot the company, let's say company A has been getting there, but it's been a slog. They are not efficient because they didn't know what they stood for. And you go through the process with this leadership team and you identify what it is you stand for. And then all of a sudden you go to take it to the team, and Bob and Stacy and Tanya all say, well, I don't agree with that. Well, then Bob, Stacy, and Tanya have a decision to make. Either they get educated and comfortable with where the company is going, or the three of them are no longer an appropriate match for the business because the business has decided to go in this new direction. And that's incredibly sensitive, and it's incredibly difficult for the leadership teams to deal with, because oftentimes there are relationships with these people, or, Gary Vaynerchuk, who I don't frequently quote, but he did a piece not long ago that was talking about, hey, if you've got somebody that's wearing on the rest of your team, even if they're your highest performer, they have to go because the impact across the rest of the team is so profound. Now, that's not a new idea, but it's another one that isn't exercised well in common business, in the sense that, people will suffer a jackass on the team for a long time before they do something without realizing the damage it's doing to the rest of the team. The team is watching. The team is watching all the time. And so when leadership doesn't deal with a problem, the team takes note. And when dealership ignores something, the team takes note. And when something pivots and then the team gets wishy-washy about it because it's too hard to deal with something, the team takes note and they adjust their behavior accordingly. And so, you're really doing yourself a disservice when you're not helping this scenario. And so internal adoption is a much bigger thing. And it's, that's one of those cans that you can open and worms come out all over the place.
I mean, if you would be up for it, I would be curious if there's any one or something over your, experience of your lifetime, any interesting story that comes up where, everything's great, even the campaigns are running, but somehow the program sort of fizzles out internally and it sort of dies its own death.
The time that it happened that sticks with me hardest was a company that we were working with, where everybody was excited about it. All the people on the leadership team, the creative was put together, like we had it, stuff was running. And then the internal team, who were already basically doing the thing that we described, so reacted to the way that we named it that they balked at it. Like they just stopped. And I've never seen it before or since. It was a team of about 100 people, and we had an idea, and it kind of brought two words together to create this new, kind of like a Farfignugan, but that's not what it was. Anyway, so we created this term, and it made sense. And for whatever reason, the internal team just wouldn't wrap their head around it. We had people that were sitting in the meeting that were going, I don't get it, and I don't want to get it, and I don't want to do it. I think it sounds dumb. And it's like, but you're already doing it. We just gave it a name. And they were like, well, I don't want to do that. And it's like, but it's already a part of your process. Like you were here a week ago talking about how much you believe in this thing that you're doing. And they were like, well, yeah, but when you say it back to me, I don't know how I would bring it to life that way. And for whatever reason, when we gave the idea a name, suddenly the responsibility to the idea became overwhelming. And we were not successful in that instance, despite the traction that we were beginning to get outside and the rest of it. We flat out failed in being able to bring that team along to get there. Leadership's point of view was, well, this is going to take us a while to adopt internally. And they literally just backed off. Now, they stayed with the idea. The idea continues to be a part of what they do to this day. And it's a big part of what they do. But it literally took them years to get their internal team to understand it and be willing to support it. And I think, again, that's one of those things that agencies don't want to talk about, right? Who wants to talk about failure? Like everybody wants to be, we launched it and it was a huge success, and babies were born, and angels wept and heaven sang. But in reality, there's a lot more time when it doesn't exactly go to plan. And what happens is you have to pivot, or you have to spend more time trying to educate people or whatever. Had we had more time, had COVID not hit, had we had a little more backing, had there been just a little more opportunity, I firmly believe we could have gotten them there. But it was new territory for us in terms of we hadn't had a group push back so completely that way. And so it was bizarre.
Yeah, I'm also getting a sense that there was a timing issue also with COVID and all these other external factors that were out of your control.
Yeah, but I'm not going to blame it on that. I don't think we did a good enough job at the time of walking into the room and saying, and it was, well, I say good enough time. We made full share presentations and working sessions with small groups, like little subset groups. I'm not really sure what more we could have done short of role playing or script writing or something like that to help them get to that place where they would have been comfortable. It typically goes that people are skeptical of change until it works, and then all of a sudden they were always behind it. That's usually the way that it goes. But in this instance, it was more like, I'm so nervous about trying it that I'm not sure that I will. And all we did was give what they were already doing a name. And for whatever reason and again, I've never seen it that way since. It was the only time that I ever ran into it that way, but it was super profound.
By the way, thank you for sharing that. And, because I think it takes a lot of balls to kind of share something that didn't work. Because sometimes, people are like, oh, don't want to share. But one thing I'll add to this is, and this is a great lesson for people who are kind of like us consultants or marketing people, whatever label that, if you're listening, whatever label you're happy with, okay? And so and this is something that I've learned from my time with the folks over at consulting is, and this is something that you just talked about, and I want to make sure that I capture this, and because for you, it's just like instinct and you're very intuitive about it, but to break it down for people who might have not understood sort of what just happened here is, when you're trying to go in and win business, you're like, oh, it's going to be amazing, babies and, all that stuff. But to say, hey, stuff goes wrong, but we're going to be here standing with you to figure it out. That puts the client at ease. Not that, oh, we're going to be amazing, we're going to hit it out of the ballpark. No, right. It's going to be the person who's going to be like upfront about, hey, shit goes wrong all the time. People leave. This happens, COVID could happen, but we're going to be standing here with you to solve it. I'm going to be on the phone with you. So just wanted to make sure that people listening have understood that part. It plays a big role in giving the other person confidence, building trust. Anything that you would want to add to this?
I think it's funny. I heard a comedian one time talk about failure. If it wasn't a comedian, it was a very funny coach. But anyway, they were talking about the fact that, when you didn't walk the first time, nobody came in and was like, well, I guess you're just not a walker, right? You're going to crawl the rest of your life. Sorry, you just screwed it up. Like you can't take failure out of the equation. You can't. Your entire life is based on modifying failure learnings. Like that's it. So the notion that they would say, oh, well, that's so sad. Little Tommy can't stand up. I guess little Tommy's just going to put his back half in a wagon and drag himself around by his forearms the rest of his natural life. It's completely ridiculous. You would never do that. You would never think that way about a child. You would say, okay, they're at the toddling stage, and you'd wrap them up in bubble wrap like we all do and let them fall down a few times until they get it right. And then we applaud when they can stand up. So I wish business leaders realized that they don't have the answer the first time every single time either. And the more we're able to do to gather the information necessary not to make a mistake, which by the way takes a little bit of time, the less mistake they're likely to make. And yet, the speed of business, if you want to talk about a phrase that I would like to have stricken from the English language, that and outside of the box are the two that I want to wrestle to the ground and stab until they quit moving, because they imply things that are not real. It's sort of this elusive thing that you can reach for, but it's not really real.
Got it. Right. Yeah, I think that example is a brilliant example. I think the key word here is to sort of bucket all of that conversation into is like failure, and like don't be afraid to say the F word, right? So maybe this is something that for you has come with maturity, like professional maturity. Sorry, I meant, or was this something that you were doing early on, where you were like open about sharing your failures, or I don't know. Is that something that you always have done, or is this something that sort of developed over time? And
I think I was just as afraid of it. Well, first off, I was committing as many as humanly possible, but I think the desensitization of I'm not supposed to have all the answers and I'm not supposed to be perfect. Like, who is? I think when we're young, we think it's possible, and you come to realize that it's not. And then you just get comfortable with it. Like the more, and that's the well-known phrase, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know about anything. Right. And I think that's true. I have a theory about something that I try to explain to people. The structure, you've kind of referenced a couple of times my saying something intuitively. I think after a while, you see that the scaffolding behind life is a repetition of the same structure over and over again. It's fear of unknown, then it's opportunity to try, then it's learning on failure, then it's whatever. And I think so many people are trying to describe the same tree on the same hill. To one person, it looks like it's backlit. To one person, it looks like it's front lit. To one person, it's lit from the left side. And from one person, it's lit from the right side. But it's the same tree on the same hill. And so, the person that looks at it and says, no, the coffee cup handle is on the right, when they're sitting across from the person just as equally saying, no, it's on the left, both of them have a point of view that's correct from what they're able to see from their vantage point. So I think the more you're able to accept the fact that you're not always going to get it right, they're not always going to get it right, and it's hard, right? Your frustration with communication is difficult. Not being heard the same way is difficult. Being patient while the communication process happens. I mean, I'm an impatient person, and about the third time I'm explaining something, it's hard for me to be like, to not just go, it's like this, but I also realize that they're feeling the exact same way about me. Anytime I hear somebody speak with a foreign accent, I'm like I'm articulate as hell in English. If I had to speak Spanish tomorrow, I would maybe get a taxi and a beer. Like that would be about all I could manage. So, I feel like communication is such a taken for granted thing that doesn't actually happen the way we think it does in the first place, and that impacts a lot.
Wisdom, love it. I was thinking that there are other aspiring people like us, and especially people who might look at your, for example, and this is kind of switching gears a little bit, is
Sure.
that when they look at like your TikTok account, you've built. By the way, it really sucks that they've put a ban on TikTok. I don't know what's going to happen there. Any thoughts for you, by the way, before we jump into this other thing?
And I am quite certain that TikTok has contingency plans left and right. I'm quite certain that relationships could be forged. I'm quite certain that it will not disappear from the face of the planet. And I'm quite certain that if it does disappear from the face of the planet, Instagram will pick it up, or YouTube, or somebody else will suddenly get all the traffic that used to go to this, or some group that's been waiting in the wings, desperate to, replicate the TikTok experience, will suddenly jump in, and people will be like, well, thank God I can go over there, and, it'll be the same kind of thing. So I just feel like this Pandora's box is open, good, bad, and ugly. Our ability to communicate one to mass and one to one this way is now a part of our DNA. And it isn't going to go away just because somebody says, well, I don't like that platform, and I don't think that the information that they're gathering on it is good for us. I laugh because China's involvement with virtually every other platform is equally profound. It's like, for whatever reason, TikTok got the black eye. So, okay, I'm like everybody else. I'm just waiting to see how the other shoe drops.
My question would be now, and this is a little bit of like going sort of behind the scenes. Actually, the whole conversation was behind the scenes. But what I think would be really helpful for people trying to build their audience online, I think you do such a fantastic job. And I would love to sort of understand first philosophically sort of how you approach the content, and then maybe we can also explore some of the more operational executional things that you do. And this is something that people can learn. And then what I would want to sort of use this building the audience is from the lens of, are you able to actually land clients, the right kind of client using TikTok as a starting point? And then how you've sort of really built it in such a fantastic way. I would love for you to sort of unpack it from your side of the fence.
First off, I have absolutely no idea why it was so successful for us. People ask me all the time, and I don't feel like what I'm doing is so radically different than some other people's content. But here's my point of view and my philosophy and what we've done. And keep in mind, we've only been doing this a year. I mean, I had never been on TikTok prior to February or March of last year. Or maybe it was a little earlier than that, but I had no following. I had no intent of being there. I thought it was just kids doing dance moves. I paid no attention to the platform whatsoever. And it was because someone suggested that I go on, and I ultimately went on to prove to them that it wouldn't work, that I was even here at all. Like, I almost didn't do this. I thank them every time I see them, by the way. My philosophy on it was very quickly, and this tips back to the whole, we are not relevant thing. Like, I'm irrelevant to the whole thing. My whole notion was, if they're going to be interested in anything, it will be interested in learning something that someone with my amount of experience would be able to share back. And the thing that I had always heard during my career was, you simplify well. Like, you take these abstract concepts and you're able to kind of come and make some sort of sense out of them that we can wrap our head around. So my thought was that I would just say, all right, I have no idea who's going to be interested in branding, but if you're going to listen to it, this would be the way to look at it. Like, let me try and simplify this down to something that you can relate to. And that was my thought. And I had somebody ask me one time, like, what's your strategy? And I really had to think about that, because I don't script, and I've got a team now that's having me do some scripted work. But for the first year, I didn't script. I didn't really do retakes. I mean, like, if I really botched something up, I didn't even edit. Like, I would just put stuff up. People were like, dude, your lighting sucks. Your sound sucks. Like, get it figured out. Get to the point was a big one that I heard a lot. It was like, hurry up, stop taking so much time, all the rest of it. But my philosophy on it was that social media is the world's biggest cocktail party, and I wasn't relevant. And so I didn't talk about me, and I didn't talk about our agency, because none of that matters. I thought that commentary is always fun on, hey, there's a great campaign, or there's a terrible campaign, and here's why. How does it work is always valuable to somebody who's either trying to get into the business or trying to do a CMO or a director of marketing role. That's like, hey, I'm trying to understand what my agency is saying. Can you give me a little insight on that? Especially if they haven't come through the agency lens. So really, my whole thing was just, let me share what I know, and let me try and share it a couple of different ways so that people don't get bored.
I love it. Again, you're like through and through, just like a simple way to look at things. And hey, I actually also really like the content that you did that had the feel of like no retake. You're just speaking off the cuff, from shooting from the hip. If that's the content that feels authentic, and it comes from like, this is coming from a true place of experience. You're not having to script it and be like, oh wait, let me educate you. You're just like, yeah, this happened, and this is kind of what we did. And
it's interesting how people responded. I remember one time I did a video where I went through something. I can't even remember now what it was. It was earlier on. And I just remember there being a whole bunch of comments that were like, and he did that in one take. And I just remember thinking, like, this was 3 minutes. Like, I conduct 2 and 3 hour workshops. Like, 3 minutes was not like, that was a walk in the park. But I guess it's just what you're used to in terms of what's expected, right? I mean, I couldn't do what a lot of people do or could do in 3 minutes. But for me, like, I have to talk in front of people all the time and explain this all the time. So I think about it a lot, and I teach my team about it this way. Is you have to know your subject as well as you know how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before you present it. If you're memorizing a script, if you're trying to remember bullet points, if you're reliant on a PowerPoint presentation, you're doomed to lose the audience. Now, I could say, Paul, right now, give me a 3-minute presentation on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And it wouldn't matter where I interrupted you. It wouldn't matter what ridiculous question I asked. Tell me about why you use that kind of knife. Tell me what happens if you put peanut butter and jelly on a rye sandwich? What happens if we put barbecue potato chips in the middle of the peanut butter and jelly? Have you ever done it with mayonnaise and pickles? Like, it wouldn't matter what they asked. You couldn't be thrown, because you know it so well. You're like, okay, anyway, yeah, rye bread, weird flavor. Hey, give it a try. Give me a shout back. Let me know. And while you're at it, check out sourdough and tell me if that was a good match, right? Like, it's okay. Like, I know right where I was. And there's nothing worse than watching, and it happens in big agencies all the time, especially with young people. They lose their place and the rest of the team doesn't know their script, and there's nothing you can do to help them. They are flopping around on the deck of the boat, waiting to die in the sun. They're just like, they've lost their place, and they're just there, and they're like, they're flopping on the deck, and they're and they start looking like in the first second you can tell they've told themselves that they can land the plane. The pilot's dead, but I can land the plane. And then they realize that they can't land the plane, and then they start looking to the other passengers. Can one of you help me? And the other passengers say, I don't know how to fly either. Man, we're all on this plane together, and it's going down. The pilot's gone, and there's nothing you can do to save them because you don't know where they were supposed to go. So the way to do it is to have an understanding, a thorough understanding of how it works.
Yeah.
So that when you're talking about it, when someone asks a question, diverts you, hiccups, coughs, and then goes on a diatribe for 30 seconds, you're not lost. You go, right, where were we again? Spreading jelly. Right. Okay. So you're going to have the bread down so that the jelly has something to land on because, gravity. And then we're going to spread it with a knife. And here's how that works. And you don't get lost.
Yeah. I think you probably remember this movie, Swordfish.
Oh, sure. Yeah. John Travolta movie?
Yeah. In which they get this programmer to go do this thing and they pressure test him. I'm not going to say what happened for people. Go watch that movie.
For the people, for a number of reasons, we won't say what sort of stress he was put under during that particular test, but we all remember.
That's literally what you're talking about. That guy's like, irrespective of all the chaos, the gun to the head, he freaking did it. Anyways, okay, love it. Okay, so that's sort of I love these kind of stories where you're like, I wasn't really even sure, but here, let me just give it a shot, and then you just turn the camera on, spoke from the hip, and you didn't worry. My guess is, based on what I'm hearing, is that you didn't worry too much about the negative comments. You were just like, let me just do this.
Oh, no, I think let's talk about that, because I think people really freak out about that. First off, you got to understand that nobody cares. But you have to be willing to accept this. Like the day you pick up your phone and do this,
yeah,
nobody cares. So you have nothing to lose. You're not risking anything because no one's watching. So guess what? It's okay. And that's what, I really struggled with this. My dad, as a disc jockey, was the man behind the microphone. And he was so comfortable with it. Like, just talking like I'm talking to you now, could do it with anybody all the time. But what my dad hated was stages. He hated it. He hated that feeling. Me, on the other hand, as a kid, I really gravitated to theater. Like, I hated being behind a mic because I had nothing to relate to. Like, the fact that I couldn't see the audience just totally threw me. I could get up on a stage in front of 10,000 people and be like, all right, so where are they emotionally? Are they laughing? Are they intent? Are they checking their phones? Like, do I have them? Do I not have them? And I'm perfectly happy in that environment. But you got to realize that when you begin this journey, nobody's paying any attention. You got lots of time to figure yourself out. Now, negativity is going to come your way because folks got nothing better to do than sit on their couch, shoving their face full of Fritos and drinking a Pepsi, and got nothing else to do and nowhere else to be important except to tell you how dumb you are. Now, if you actually saw a window into the world of the people that were making the comments, you would cease to care altogether, because most of them have no basis in which they should be critiquing you in the first place or whatever. And people will come at you. And the answer that I give to all of them is, you can't please all the people all the time. That's the only answer, is a diffusion, because it's not important. It's so not important. They're not going to, short of a few folks that are really a little off kilter, they're not going to show up at your house and with a sign and say, you're an idiot. It's not going to happen that way. They're going to lose interest 10 seconds after they scroll unless you engage them. So don't. There's no point in it. If it is a constructive counterpoint, engage all day long. If somebody truly believes that my point of view is idiotic and they're saying something that proves that point, I'll discuss it with them all day because I might learn something or I might convert them. Either way, I win. So it's a good thing either direction. But I think a lot of people are just terrified, like, what's it going to mean? What's it going to do to my reputation? How will I feel about it? Like, you don't have to feel about it anyway at all. They're people that are protected under the guise of being anonymous. Like, you know, I did a post one time where I went and said, this is why Bud Light got in the trouble that it did. And, you know, it was like 700,000 views and comments and, you know, craziness. And I remember when I hit send on it.
The bear.
Yeah. I mean, but my point was I wasn't taking a side. I was saying what happened was they turned their back on their base. Like their base was backyard grill, Joe and Jane Americana. And when Bud Light just flipped them the bird and was like, we're going to go to this person that we know damn well is going to ride roughshod over your value system just because we want to sell a few more cases of beer, that was dumb. Like that was just not thought out. There were other ways they could have done something. And it was gratuitous. And as a result, folks got fired and jobs were lost and, you know, money was lost and folks were shooting cans of Bud Light in the backyard. And I mean, you know, whatever. Well, anyway, I put this thing on. And everybody under the sun told me I was a moron, like all of them. And I was like, you know, stock's down, things are going, and people were trying to educate me on how to read stock charts. And people were telling me that I was an idiot and nothing over at Anheuser-Busch ever happened without NASA certified strategic thinking before they did it. And I was like, first off, I worked for Anheuser-Busch with Anheuser-Busch. I didn't work for them as their agency for a while. I was like, I can tell you just from the sidelines, that's not the way that happened. They're a huge organization. They have lots of people. The left hand and the right hand are trying hard to communicate, but they can't always. Like, come on, let's not turn them into, you know, the greatest think tank that ever was. They're Anheuser-Busch. So AB made this mistake. And then I went back on a few months later because everybody was like, you don't know how to read stock. It's going to be back up in a week. So I waited 3.5 months and I went back on. I was like, by the way, for those of you at home playing the at home game, just wanted to let you know stock is still tanking. So just FYI, it's not even about whether I'm right or wrong, but it is about this thing that they did had prolonged impact on the brand. And if your job as the CEO of the company, as the CMO of the brand is to maintain or accelerate growth on behalf of the company, then when you make a choice like, hey, y'all, watch this, you can't be too surprised when something goes off the rails and folks are upset about it, especially if you didn't really think through what dominoes could have fallen if we do this.
By the way, I did watch that video, the one that you made. I enjoyed. I agreed with it. I think I even put a comment like 100 or something. I don't remember what comment I put, but I definitely put something to the sentiment of like, I agree.
Well, let me say something more to that too, because that's a good point. And I've seen a couple of strategists get on and talk about this. The people that like your brand aren't the ones that grow your channel. Sorry, but it's true. It's the people who hate you that grow your channel, because they're the ones that get on and they're like, you're a moron and you do this. And you know what they do the next day? They come back to see how stupid you are again. It's the haters that grow your channel. It's the saddest thing, but it's true. It's when the thing you say makes them think and they get angry about a counterpoint that they don't like. And then they're like, not only am I going to send you a message, I'm going to tell 10 friends of mine about how dumb you are so they can all jump on and say the same thing. And you watch your numbers go like this and you're like, wow. So I said, chocolate isn't the best flavor anymore. Like everybody got bent out of shape about that. So I don't know. It's just funny, but haters have probably twice the impact. I remember the study about Howard Stern, and the radio station was all freaked out because, he was saying these crazy things, but his numbers were so big that nobody could know, could really say anything about it. And they were trying to get him off the air. And they were like, well, we did a survey with the people that love him. And the number one reason that they stay is because they can't wait to see what he says next. And then they did the same survey with the people that were leaving or that hated him. And they said they wouldn't leave the channel because they couldn't wait to see what he said next. And so it was like, whether you love him or you hate him, the bottom line is that he's got your attention and he's keeping it. And so I think that there's a lot to be learned from that lesson in terms of how to grow your channel. Just whatever you do, don't sit there and say, we make glasses. Look at our new glasses. And here's our glasses in red. And here's our glasses in blue. And this time we've got our glasses on the microphone. Like, nobody's going to watch that. Nobody's going to get anywhere on it. You're never going to get any traction that way.
Oh my God.
Talk about how other glasses suck. Talk about why they fail. Talk about how, a hinge is not just a hinge, but it actually does something. Like, teach people something, entertain them, give them something to pay attention to. That's what most people miss. They're like, hey, I posted. I'm like, fantastic. There's 171 million people on the platform, each of them posting at least once a week, right? So that's a lot of posts you're competing with. I mean, for all the quote unquote success that my channel's had, it's only 118,000 people. Like, let's not lose sight of the fact that this isn't even a rounding error. There's 370 million people in the United States. I'm not even a hash mark. You know what I mean? Like 117, 118, hell, it could be 250,000 people. The craziest thing about all of this is how insignificant it truly is.
Oh, you have a way of like bringing it back to where we started.
He's like a boomerang, man. You throw him out there and he goes all over the damn place and then he comes right back here. Yeah.
So I only have two more questions on the TikTok and then we can wrap up. We can begin to wrap up.
Yeah, sure.
So the other thing is, and this is like the, canary in the coal mine, or maybe there's another analogy here, but so out of this effort that you're putting on TikTok, has any interesting client come through the door?
Yeah, we had 45 new clients last year alone from TikTok.
Wow. I mean,
it is a B2B success story. It's well over $2.5 million just in the last 10.5 months.
That's probably why, it gives you the incentive to keep going.
Well, yeah, it sure does.
Guys, this is working.
It's doing well.
Okay, so that's a really good sign. And then final question on the TikTok piece was, so how much time do you spend per week, or how much time do you actually take to make content and all that stuff, just to get a gauge, like somebody at your level, like what you're kind of like. I'm thinking, here's what there's a business owner sitting here somewhere and they're like, I'm not getting any leads or some version of that. Maybe you can invest in building your brand, but in addition to that, start getting leads, right? That's kind of like a win-win sort of situation.
I've been told a bunch of times that the response that we're getting is atypical. So, I don't know that.
But your content's also atypical in the kind of content that you're, like, in the niche area that you are in.
I suppose. I mean, I think, what kind of time do we take? Well, in the beginning, it was a couple times a week. Mm-hmm. And I would think of an idea and it was like, okay, let's imagine. Well, this brings me to a point that I think is really, really, really important and that most people don't think to ask. So let me just throw it out on the table. You have to be willing to give away everything. This sounds so counterintuitive and people don't get it. I tell people what I do when I get paid every single time I get on TikTok. I tell them how I do it. I tell them what I do. I share documents that we use. The simple truth of the matter is that what I'm trying to achieve is a better educated client. They can only know that if I've explained to them what it is that we're going to be doing on their behalf. If I hide it, which is what everybody tries to do, then I've done them no service. I can't tell you the number of people out of that 40 some that we had last year, probably 10 of them, which is a surprising number, that wouldn't let me pitch them. Like they would get on the call with me and I would start to tell them like how we work. And they're like, no, I've seen your videos. Like, I get it. Send me a proposal. And that was the sum total length of the call, because they're like, you've already explained to me what it is you do, why you do it, what you believe. I'm already bought in. You've already given that to me. So I now know, like, I wanted to find out, are you still a good human being when I talk to you? Or are you, a jackass? Okay, not a jackass. Chemistry test is good. Do you have a team or is it just you? Got a team of 20. Okay, you're a real company. Like, are you what I thought you were? And when they find out that I am, they're like, I'm hiring you. I mean, I literally had a guy yesterday, this is no joke, wave his credit card at me while I was taking him through the introduction deck. He goes, stop. Where do I sign? Like, he literally took his credit card out of his pocket and started like waving it and going, you can stop. Like, you had me at hello. And I think that's the piece that people don't get. So like, if I was a plumber, just to keep it super simple, I would be saying, so I'm here at Bill's house and Bill's got a leaky faucet. Let me show you what that looks like. When I say leaky faucet, this is what we mean. See, this thing doesn't work and that thing doesn't work. Most of you would call a plumber. Let me show you what you can do. If you've got the skills to do it, let me help you not have to use a plumber, because there's going to be other problems that are going to happen that are in the crawl space or behind a wall. Like, that's when you really need us. But this thing about like, we're going to grab a hex wrench. If you don't know what a hex wrench is, here's what it is. And there's this little thing you pop out and that gets you to the screw. And like, here's how this works. Now, if you can't do that by yourself, or you're uncomfortable with it, or you're worried about it, hey, that's cool. Give me a call. And that's basically what I'm doing with my channel, is I'm saying, listen, this is how this really works. This is how you need to look at it. This is what you're looking for. This is how the pieces come together. And then they are able to say back either, hey, I like that, or sometimes I get messages from people and they're like, oh my God, we were so stuck as a team and I shared this video with them and we're not stuck anymore. Dude, thank you. Now, some people would say, you're an idiot. You gave away the milk for free. I say nonsense. When those people hit another growth spurt and they realize that the problem's bigger than they have the ability to solve, who are they going to call? Ghostbusters, right? Because they're going to say, look, that guy took the time to tell me stuff I needed to know to be able to understand how to look at the problem. Now I feel confident with who he is and what he's about and what his team will be able to do on my behalf.
I mean, you are coming from a place of abundance versus scarcity, right? And that's the way the human psychology works. When you chase someone, they just keep running. But when you pause and you say, wait, why? Then all that human psychology, the abundance mindset, the ability to say no, and giving away all the good stuff for free.
Give it away, and give it away as fast and as hard as you can.
I love it. Give it. Bill, this has been a super entertaining, fun, educational conversation. And what I would like to do now is there's a fun activity I do with all my guests. And it is, you have to pick a number between 1 and 3001. And,
oh, wow.
And the book is called 3001 Questions All About Me.
That's great. I love it. Okay.
So
cool. I'm going to choose question 3001.
Oh, why didn't anybody else do this?
Because I doubt anybody ever does the bookends. Probably question 1, maybe a few times, but who goes to the end?
Nobody.
So yeah, I'm going to pick 3001.
This is the first time. Okay. Here's the question. Have I ever crossed a finish line?
Is this for me or you?
No, this is, you have to answer this.
Oh, yeah, I've crossed several finish lines. Sure. Absolutely. Some of them were more like, you're finished, but I mean, it's all good. Like sometimes it was a finish line. Sometimes it was, you're finished. Sometimes it was, thank God we got here at all. Like, I think, isn't that everybody's story?
Okay, listen. The funny story is the question, like right above this one, that the question is, has anyone ever been angered by my honesty?
Yeah, check. It's like no problem there. Had it, done it, got the t-shirt. It's more like a bed set, really, at this point. I mean, we've got towels. It's a good thing.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, okay.
So this is good. I'm leaving you in a good place today. Look at all that good karma you got going around.
Oh, yeah. This is right from the onset of the conversation. This has been, so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to summarize the highlight reel of the second half, and I'll give you an opportunity to add anything to it if you want. And then finally, if there's anything that you would like to leave the audience with, you can think about that while I'm sort of doing this spiel. It'll give you some time to think. And then the last thing is, where can people find you and what's the best way to engage with you? So that's kind of the format.
Sure.
So I'll kick off. So the highlight reel of the second half of the conversation was all about, failure and accepting it and sharing it with your client, being transparent. And that actually helps build trust, confidence. The other is, you have to really be, know your subject really well. The peanut butter analogy, the peanut butter sandwich, the PBJ sandwich salad, PBJ sandwich analogy. And
that's what happens after 2 hours. It all falls apart. It's like, man, 2:45. We're lucky to say peanut butter at this stage of the game.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, okay. And then nobody cares. Nobody cares. So don't worry about
Nobody
it.
cares.
Like, just do your thing.
Yeah.
That
relax,
is,
man.
Yeah. And then haters grow your channel. I'll add one more thing to this. This is something that I on my previous podcast, I was talking to this person called Jen Allen. Not Jennifer. Actually, no, Jen was short for Jennifer, I think. Anyways, so she said that, she is very active on LinkedIn. She is into helping salespeople with how to show up, how to write emails better, how to, communicate and converse. And she talks about all that stuff. And so she's built a massive audience. I think she has like 70,000 people on LinkedIn or whatever. And so her insight was, just like, your insight is haters grow your channel. So she had this insight that, buyers are lurkers. The buyers, the people who are not like commenting on your stuff, they're just lurking around, and they will come in and they'll be like, yeah, we were watching your content. Yeah, we were ready to buy. But you'll notice that they never engage with your content. That's an insight that she had shared. I thought that's
a good one.
That was interesting. I don't know if you've experienced that, Bill, but and then finally, be willing to give away the castle, right? Give away everything. And that's a great way to have better educated clients come to your door. It's a win-win.
That's it.
Yeah.
So here's the one thing that we didn't talk about that I think is the last piece that's so important. There is no spoon. And what I mean by that is there is no competition. You never had any competition except yourself. And I think businesses that get caught up in trying to compete with one another make really foolish decisions. Keep in mind that businesses like Nike, they don't have competition anymore, right? When you get to $46 billion and you're bigger than your top 3 competitors combined, you don't have anyone to compete with anymore. And what those groups realize is that now it's about what is our full potential. Your full potential is throttled the second you pay attention to your competition. And this is another one of those things that's hyper counterintuitive. So people have a really hard time wrapping their head around it. But the truth of the matter is the less, in the beginning, see what they're doing, understand where you can strategically be, and then forget them. Because the only thing you have to compete with is yourself. And for the companies that think that way, I find that they are, they're less distracted. They are more focused. They are more willing to try things because they're not measuring themselves against other things. It's not to say that you can't learn valuable information from competitors. They make mistakes that you can learn from. They have wins you can learn from, all that. But to measure yourself by them is an incredible waste of energy.
Would it be fair to say that we're actually saying, like, try to be a one-off one? Like, sure, understand your competition, understand the space, but just if you focus on being a one-off one, because there's always room in the market for the best.
There's always room for the market for it. Look, if you love drawing purple cows, there's an audience. It might be a small one, but there's an audience. There's someone that's going to buy your purple cow paintings, right? So all that matters is you competing with yourself in terms of how you measure your success and satisfaction with your achievement. Measuring yourself against somebody, oh man, those guys, they're number one again. The negative energy that comes out of that is so detrimental long term that you don't realize it. It causes stress, it causes anxiety, it causes the rest of it. All that matters is, what are you capable of? It has nothing to do with what they are capable of. They are going to be busy doing their own thing. You need to be busy doing your own thing. So, for the companies that are just consumed with Hatfield and McCoy kind of, hatred for one another, there's this famous story that one of the Bushes, I can't remember if it was Augie the Third or Augie the Fourth, had a Miller mat under his desk and rubbed his feet on it every day, just out of spite as an Anheuser-Busch person against Miller, and it's like that kind of thing is pervasive. Like, that gets into you as a person and it changes who you are. Like, just focus on what you are trying to do. That's like, the rest of it will take care of itself. It's hard enough to get you right. Like, if you're worried about someone else, that's a lot of energy to expend somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm totally aligned with that philosophically. Although I was a little bit surprised when I saw a little bit of the Jordan documentary where for him, it was all about like revenge and like spy. Maybe it just worked in that one unique situation.
It's, I think he was one of those people that just, he fed on competition, but I don't know that he necessarily measured himself by their success as much as he was frustrated at his lack of ability to dominate at all times. And I think that there's a distinction to be made there. Like, I didn't see it as one, I kind of saw it as the other. Now, that may be giving him more credit than was due.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. I can live with that.
I don't know that I'm right. He might just be a vindictive shit. I don't know. He might just say, I just can't stand it when someone else gets something that I don't. But I'd like to think, as a Chicagoan and as a Bulls fan and as a person that saw every single championship game in a Chicago bar, I can't bring myself to think that negatively of the man. Mike, I'm rooting for you, man. Even now, even from the stands, I'm right here for you.
What he was really trying to say was...
Right. Yeah, exactly. What he meant was, or maybe not, but nonetheless. Nonetheless.
Okay, Bill.
Paul, thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise. So by the way, where can people find you and where can they reach out to you? What are your handles and stuff?
So on TikTok, which is really the big stage for us, is at Brand Boss HQ. There's a bunch of asshats running around with variations of our name trying to sell crypto. We're not trying to sell crypto. As far as website, brandbosshq.com. And those are really, I think, the best places. The larger agency is wmharper.com. So those are the places where you can sort of find us.
By the way, how are those two things different, just for people listening, so like they can go to the right spot?
Yeah, so Brand Boss is where we start everybody because it is the strategy side of the house. So whether the the relationship is small and is just focused on consulting, or it's focused on the development of brand story and brand strategy alone, everybody comes through Brand Boss first. And then those companies that move into campaign development, that moves over to the WMH team.
Fair enough. Okay. This was really helpful. Thank you so much, Bill. This was super entertaining and lots to learn. My jaw's hurting, by the way, but
then I've done my job well.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Paul. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing everything come together.
Yes.